Welcome back to the channel. It's your girl Wisdom's daughter, and we are covering the Diddy trial. Today is day 8. We're already hearing that guns, stilettos, and baby oil were found during the raid on Diddy's Miami mansion, and Kid Cudi is expected to testify later today. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Also, consider joining to become a member on Wisdom's Daughter. We'd love to have you as a Wisdom Ambassador. And if you would like to send a gift, you can send Cash Apps to I Am Wisdom's Daughter. All right, let's get into this live Diddy coverage. The weather is absolutely horrendous in New York City. So if you didn't take your umbrella, today was definitely not a day not to have your umbrella. As you can see, the weather is not good for those who are standing outside the courthouse, who are filming at the courthouse. So hopefully you got your spot inside the courthouse, because that is the place that you want to be today. So here's some of what we know thus far. A clinical psychologist by the name of Dawn, and let me see if I can get that last name for you, is testifying about some of the things that we already know, that it is very difficult getting out of relationships, period, but certainly coming out of a relationship where you have been subjected to some of the things that Cassie Ventura has been subjected to is not, it's no easy feat. And so it is Dr. Dawn Hughes, a clinical psychologist, who was testifying earlier today and this morning on just in general traumatic events and the resulting stress that can come from that. And which is great, because Cassie's been getting a lot of flack. She's been called, so many horrible names, and has not been seen in a good light, with even the defense questioning, well, if things were so bad, why didn't you leave? And it's unfortunate that that's what we do to victims. And you can't possibly understand, well, maybe after hearing the testimony of Dr. Dawn Hughes, will be better understanding. Rapper Kid Cudi is expected to testify as early as tomorrow about his relationship with Cassie, and prosecutors right now contend that Diddy was so upset by the relationship that he arranged to have Kid Cudi's convertible firebombed. And those of you who remember back then when it happened, he did threaten Kid Cudi, and Kid Cudi's car was blown up. And so there was some validity to that. All right, let's get into some of what is happening now.
We were showing that to you earlier this morning. We do still have this live look of the skyline right there of downtown New York City. So on the stand right now is a psychology expert, Dr. Dawn Hughes. She's testifying right now, talking about trauma response, and the trauma bond that can keep a victim in a relationship with her abuser. So the very latest is this. She has been talking to the jury about trauma bonds during her testimony today in the Sean Diddy Combs sex trafficking trial, explaining that because these relationships start with love, the victims continue to want that feeling. And when they are shown that love, they want it back. And that creates, she says, a psychological attachment called
And so while we're waiting to get the rest of this feed, I think the prosecution is very smart to bring in this clinical psychologist. I suspected that they would. I'm glad that they did do that, to break down the psychological trauma that you can experience in a relationship like this, and what can happen, especially with someone as young as Cassie Ventura. Let's see if we can get some more traction on this live feed.
Don't have this live look of the skyline right there of downtown New York City. Cassie Ventura's mom. We then heard from one of the male escorts. Now we're getting into the more expert testimony, which can often be a little bit drier, but also really hammer the points home that the prosecution and the defense want to make. Let's start with the person on the stand right now, this clinical psychologist who is talking about trauma bonds, etc. What is the prosecution trying to point to when it comes to the charges against Sean Diddy Combs?
What they're trying to do with Dr. Hughes is they're trying to shore up a lot of loose ends, and they're trying to fortify Cassie Ventura's testimony through an expert witness. A lot of times when you're prosecuting, your case is only as strong as your weakest link, and your weakest link is going to be the human being, the vulnerable, fragile, oftentimes victimized human being who has to go on the witness stand and face cross-examination. They may not remember things. They may have motive or incentive to act a certain way. And what the prosecution will do is they'll call an expert often cases, and that person will fortify the testimony, explain, here's why this person might say this, here's why this person might say that. Dr. Hughes is what's called a blind expert, meaning she has intentionally not learned any of the facts of this case, which sort of also kind of walls her off from certain cross-examination things. But the weak points there are that she's going to be vulnerable to certain things that she has to assume by virtue of not really getting into the facts. But we do see this. This is a very common tactic prosecutors use to fortify what a victim is testifying about.
So yeah, it's interesting because you were mentioning something very important, considering that she is giving blind testimony. So she doesn't know the details of the facts. And I think a lot of people wonder, okay, so when does the prosecution reach out to an expert saying, hey, look, we want you on a certain case. Don't read or don't, figure out any of the specific details. How does that work?
Well, they don't, it's sort of understood. They don't tell the expert not to do anything. They just don't provide them any information for that. And then that way the expert can go up there and just sort of opine. And it's a very sort of wash, rinse, repeat process. You see it in a lot of child abuse cases. You see it in a lot of domestic violence cases. And what this expert will do is they will, in some instances in state court, they will go literally from courtroom to courtroom. And they may testify 2 to 3 times per week. And it's a vulnerability if the defense can get there. If the defense can ask questions like, okay, so why didn't you look into this case? Why didn't you try to study that? Why didn't you try to interview Miss Ventura? Why didn't you try to interview her mom? Why didn't you even look at the police report? So there are some built-in vulnerabilities there when you are going to go into a case and be somewhat blind. The rules assume when you call an expert witness that you're going to be talking about more highbrow psychological principles. Also, what that means is that the defense can say, okay, doctor, you're not going to look at the facts of this case. That's fine. Well, would you agree with this study that happened in 1993 where the opposite experts concluded something different? That's what this debate sort of turns into. But again, the prosecution is winning to some degree, at least on the issue of fortifying Miss Ventura's testimony and supplementing it, because their case is only as strong as the weakest link, and the weakest link is almost always going to be the human being that is the victim that they're calling to try to strengthen a lot of those inherent vulnerabilities that a victim or a complainant is going to have.
And we have a live stream going, Jeremy, and a lot of people, again, are very interested in understanding, that human aspect. Cassie chose, they say, to stay with Sean Diddy Combs, the psychologist, talking about the trauma bond that makes them feel like they have no other option. When it comes, though, and we were mentioning domestic violence, that is not a charge, that Sean Diddy Combs is facing. He's facing sex trafficking, a number of other ones. What does this particular expert testimony, what is that going to point towards for the prosecution to make their case? Because it's not about domestic violence. It's not about sexual assault. These are higher level, federal charges.
Ultimately, the prosecution is going to have to connect this to some broader things if they want to prove racketeering, if they want to prove some kind of conspiracy. And the micro moment of sort of what we're seeing is they're still not quite done with Miss Ventura. Obviously, they were concerned enough about Miss Ventura's testimony to try to call Dr. Hughes. If I'm the defense, I'm pointing out several things with this expert's testimony. What I'm saying is, listen, if we have a blind witness up here, she's sort of presuming guilt and not innocence. And you have to presume guilt because what she's testifying to is because Miss Ventura is a victim, therefore this, therefore she's a victim. So it is almost sort of circular logic. If you're the defense, you're really pointing to that, saying, well, wait a minute here, you're saying she's the victim, and that's your first point. Shouldn't that be what this all leads up to? Another sort of blind spot with these experts is that some of these thoughts and theories don't necessarily account for certain things, such as drug abuse or mental health issues, and they also can sort of lack the understanding that sometimes, and as Diddy has done with his defense, these sort of things can be kind of mutual, right? That there can be this mutual disliking, but ultimately, to your point, Stephanie, I think you're correct. Ultimately, this has got to get somewhere bigger. It's got to get to some of these outward conspiracies and not be about Miss Ventura. Because if P. Diddy is guilty of domestic violence towards her, it doesn't prove these federal charges. Now, it gets the jury not to like him, and that's certainly part and parcel of an effective prosecution, whether we like that or not. But ultimately, you're correct, Stephanie. This has to get bigger, and we're going to have to see some witnesses that ultimately connect a few more dots than we're seeing here.
Yeah, I mean, as of now, and I'd love to get your opinion on this. We've been hearing from Cassie. I mean, just incredibly powerful, gripping, harrowing testimony. But again, what does that kind of point to? It certainly creates an emotion, I would imagine, in a juror and the jury. But the prosecution, as you know, has to go well beyond that when proving their case. When you're taking a look at the testimony that we have heard thus far, where do you think the ball has fallen? Do you think that right now, the defense seems to have a stronger case, or the prosecution? Again, this is 8 weeks long. Anything could happen in those 8 weeks. But at this point in time, day 8 of testimony, what's your takeaway?
You're seeing everybody's strategy really start to take shape and develop. You're seeing the prosecution trying to lay the predicate that this man is an abuser, that these acts did occur, that there was sex abuse, that there was the transportation of people, that there was force, that there was intimidation. So you're starting to see sort of the groundwork formed there from the prosecution and the government's standpoint. You're also sort of seeing from Diddy's standpoint, sort of the divide and conquer defense of, well, okay, maybe we're a bad guy. Maybe we did commit some of these things, but you've got to make this bigger. You've got to connect this at a larger level. Also, part of that is to sort of what you call in criminal court, kissing the ugly baby or throwing the skunk on the table. That would be for Diddy and his team to kind of marry up to some of the bad facts. Okay, fine, maybe he is abusive. Okay, fine, maybe he wasn't very pleasant. Okay, fine, we're guilty of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but we're not guilty of some of these more fabulous things that you're sort of alleging. So you are sort of seeing a lot of those, both of those theories really starting to congeal and to take shape. And I think you're just going to see more of that as this case goes on.
I just want to touch upon before we let you go, because I know that you have a very busy schedule. Everyone really kind of, I would imagine hoping to hear from Kid Cudi on the stand today. We were hearing from prosecutors that he's not going to appear any earlier than tomorrow. But obviously, he has a very key part in this. He had a relationship with Cassie. Prosecution is saying that, Combs was so upset by this relationship that he, said that he was going to firebomb Kid Cudi's vehicle. We hear that that's going to point to arson, but how key is that testimony going to be?
It's going to be key if it starts to sort of spider out into some of these broader conspiracy type things. And remember, when you're charging somebody with racketeering, they've got to agree to a criminal enterprise that is bigger than just themselves. That enterprise doesn't have to be P. Diddy's organization. It doesn't have to be necessarily a formal company or something like that. It can just be a handful of people who are engaging in moving people from one place to another, who are engaging in this type of intimidation. So when I'm watching that testimony, that's going to be what I'm looking for. Is this starting to spider out beyond not just Cassie Ventura, not just beyond her, but beyond some of the other people that are helping Diddy? Because it's not going to be the people that are victimized here that create this racketeering and create this conspiracy. It's going to be the people that are helping Diddy. That's what the conspiracy is. That's what the racketeering is. That's what makes these cases federal.
Yeah, and you kind of answer another question that a lot of people are wondering, Jeremy. This RICO, right? This is what we're continuing to hear about, the racketeering, and it has to do with an organization. It can't just be one individual. However, Diddy, I believe, was the only person named in this. So when you're talking about broadening it out, how does that work if he's the only one right now charged with that particular count?
The other co-conspirators don't have to be. They don't have to be indicted. They don't even have to be a co-conspirator, so to speak. They don't even have to be legally identified. It just has to be shown that you were a part of a broader group of people that were engaging in this organization or organized line of thinking, if you will. So those people could be government witnesses. Or they could just be shown that, look, there was somebody else that was out there that was with you. If you're prosecuting somebody for robbing a bank and there's 3 or 4 people with you that are on video, we don't know who they are. We know that can be a conspiracy, right? We can see that, and the jury can infer that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody indicted, but they do have to point at some point to other people who are out there who are assisting. And now they're almost certainly going to say Diddy was the ringleader of that, right? That Diddy was the person that was sort of intimidating those people too. But it's got to be just more than him.
So interesting. And thank you for kind of laying that out, because I think, most of us are not legal experts, unlike yourself. And sometimes this is high level and we don't really understand exactly, what the thought process or what the procedure is. So, so many twists and turns. And obviously, we're just at the very beginning of this. But is there anything in particular, Jeremy, that has really stood out or stuck with you as we continue to hear from these witnesses and continue to, see the sketches and, all of the twists and turns?
So far, the government has made a really, really concerted effort to show how abusive and unlikable P. Diddy is. That's a chunk of what they've got to do in this case. That's a chunk of what they have to prove, but it's not everything. So that part of it, I don't know that I would call that surprising, but they have certainly made a concerted effort. And I wouldn't necessarily expect to see somebody like Dr. Hughes come and testify, a blind witness, to try to really come and drive these things home. It's sort of killing a fly with an atom bomb, if you will. But that's what the government does, and this is a high-profile case for them. They certainly don't want to blow it, and they certainly don't want to lose it. But anytime you're going to throw a blind witness on the stand again, you're going to be vulnerable in certain ways. Just a lot of the things that we've already covered. But just to, if there's anything out here that is really just sort of sticking out so far, it's that they are really, really, really hammering on P. Diddy, the individual. And I think that's going to be a broader part of what they ultimately do when they sort of say, and here's all the tentacles that Diddy has. And this is why it's racketeering. This is why it's trafficking. It's why it's all these greater things.
Yeah, maybe the alleged mastermind of sorts. Jeremy, as always, we appreciate you taking the time to join us on Live Now from Fox. My gosh, day 8, but we're potentially a week 8, into it. So no doubt we're going to speak with you again.
Thank you, Stephanie.
We're taking another live look right here at the skyline. And, we did want to also share this live update from Fox 5 New York right here. This is a social media post saying Kid Cudi is expected to testify at the trial, taking the witness stand to tell the jury about his brief relationship 14 years ago with Combs's ex-girlfriend Cassie. So that really is the testimony that we are really interested in hearing about. And we are going to be putting up a side panel of sorts just to give you the very latest and greatest. But as we continue to follow this, I did want to just give you a brief recap if you're just joining us at this hour, because testimony did resume around 9 a.m. This was a continuation of a witness that was on the stand yesterday. This is a witness of HSI Special Agent Jared Gannon. And so He resumed his testimony this morning, talking about helping plan the raid on Sean Diddy Combs' home in 2024, and then also talking about, this was yesterday, testifying about the items they seized. So the jury did find a number of items, and we're just going to bring up that side panel for you as we continue our live coverage right here, if you just bear with me. But I did want to share that very latest as we continue our live coverage right here. So we are going to bring that up for you as we continue that live coverage. What we're going to do, though, is we are going to give you the very latest. And as we work on this, we're just going to pause for a moment on this live look right here. We're going to be pulling up some of the very latest information in just a moment.
So I'm reading some of the comments. Yeah, so it was said that people are being paid $20 an hour to wear free puff t-shirts. So yeah, somebody might want to call their favorite Bible lady or their favorite silverback and let them know if they want to make some money out there, they can put on a free puff t-shirt, because you know they like promoting and protecting these type of people. All right.
So we did want to share that very latest with you. And here it is right here. Dr. Don Hughes right now testifying for the traumatic events and the resulting stress in that. And we are going to work to get a live bug up here if I can, and bear with me. We're going to get someone to help me with that in just a moment. But right now, still on the stand is Dr. Don Hughes, who is a clinical psychologist testifying about traumatic events and the resulting stress. But as I was mentioning before, the very first person back on the stand this morning was HSI Special Agent Jared Gannon. So the jury was shown some photos and items that agents seized, including platform heels found inside Diddy's home. They also found 12 other pairs of platform heels. The prosecution showed the jury various pairs of other shoes and boots, and inside one of those boots, Gannon claims that they found 3 cell phones. They also found a black Gucci bag on top of the dresser. And inside that bag, Gannon claims they found an assortment of pills, presumably narcotics, as well as powder. Those pills were a number of colors: blue, pink, white, yellow, and also a bag of pink pills, a bag of white powder, and a container with white substance inside. There was also a $100 bill found inside the bag that tested positive for cocaine and ketamine. So he was just relaying what else he found, including multiple bottles of baby oil. And in fact, the jury saw that evidence, that they saw the bags of the bottles. Those were inside the courtroom. And Gannon also testifying that they found a box with the inscription "Puffy" in the master bathroom. Inside was a bag with a clear pill and crystal rock-like substance. So just sharing that with you. They also found a handgun as well inside that home. But that was the first person who took to the stand today. So we're continuing to find the very latest on this, but still at this point in time, Dr. Don Hughes continuing to be on the stand right here. And in just a moment, we're going to continue our coverage with criminal defense attorney Michael Gottlieb, who's going to talk more about this case, about the evidence that is currently being presented to the jury, and where this all leads, because obviously there has to be an end result. There has to be a purpose as to why the prosecutors are calling these specific individuals to the stand, and also showing these photos of evidence right here. So we are going to be speaking with him in just one moment. But on the left-hand side of your screen is just the very latest for you on that. And we do see that Michael Gottlieb is joining us right here. We're going to just step away quickly. I do want to do a microphone check with him, and then we'll just bring him on live to kind of disseminate a little bit more of what is happening right now.
I'm good. How are you? Of course. Whenever you're ready, I'm ready.
On the left-hand side of your screen, the latest information on this case is Dr. Dawn Hughes continues to testify. At the moment, she is a clinical psychologist talking about trauma bonds, talking about the dynamic between a victim and an abuser and what that all entails. Also, you may have heard that rapper Kid Cudi is expected to testify. Now, there was a question as to whether he could testify today. However, prosecutors have indicated that he will be testifying no earlier than tomorrow about his relationship with Cassie. Prosecutors want to question him because they contend Combs was so upset by this relationship, he arranged to have Kid Cudi's convertible firebombed. And so to talk more about the people on the stand and, you know, where all of this goes, I do want to bring in a criminal defense attorney, Michael Gottlieb. Michael, we appreciate you joining us here on Live Now from Fox.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
So, you know, I want to start with the very first witness who was called to the stand today. This was someone who started testifying yesterday. This is one of the HSI special agents that, you know, kind of spearheaded the raid of Sean Diddy Combs' Star Island mansion back in 2024. He was detailing, you know, items that he found, handguns, you know, AK-50, you know, just rifles as well, with some of the file numbers filed off, shoes, drugs. What is, you know, I guess the question I have is, what's the point? Where is this leading? You know, what is the significance of what they found inside the house? Because you have to wonder, why are they bringing up like 10 pairs of platform shoes? What's the point?
Well, so I think it's a great question, but because I think what it does is it all dovetails into the allegations, which are RICO and the sex trafficking, as well as we're talking, you know, a criminal case, bringing a criminal case, it's inference upon inference. And what it does is the government is building on those. And with the testimony of the psychologists today, you're going to want to show that, you know, when somebody's in love with somebody, they tend to do something. When somebody's afraid of somebody, they intend to do what that person wants even more. So we're talking about these freakouts. So we know we have a love affair going on that went on for, you know, close to 20 years. We know that we've had these freakouts. We've heard about pools filled with oil, so on and so forth. And now we heard that people had to wear costumes. So we're seeing some of the costuming and we're seeing the guns. So I think all of this goes to prove every count that there is, including the RICO count, including that other people had to help Diddy pull this off. So I think it's very poignant evidence in this case.
So, and you were talking about that, you know, Sean Diddy Combs couldn't have done this all himself, that he had to have, you know, additional help, additional agents, if you will, for him to carry that out, kind of pointing to the organization, you know, that you have to have for that racketeering charge. You know, when it comes to laying out the evidence, you know, is it more effective? And I'm just kind of curious about the strategy, because sometimes it might take a while for the jury to kind of string these pieces of evidence together, and they may be wondering, you know, why this, and then the next day why that, but then it all adds up. Is that a more effective strategy, you know, just providing a little bit of evidence each and every day versus kind of these like shocking moments? You know, is that a strategy that they're looking at?
Yeah, I think obviously you want to keep the jury informed. When I try a case, you want to keep them informed. You want to keep them entertained. But let's understand, this is a federal criminal trial. The judge has reined them in a little bit in terms of, you know, when the evidence will be presented, how long a cross-examination will be. But it's like a puzzle or building a building. Okay, you're going to do it one level at a time, one layer at a time. So it's, you know, it's really important to do inference upon inference. The government has a 96% conviction rate. they're very likely to get a conviction in this case, and they're going to continue entertaining the jury. That, you know, it's very sexually prurient allegations. The jury wants to hear this kind of stuff, and not every day in trial can be that exciting. So it's just a matter of building piece by piece by piece by piece until you get a complete picture of all the criminal wrongdoing that's going on here.
All right, and we did want to just let our viewers know, we just got this in. The court it has now recessed for lunch, so the cross-examination of the psychologist Don Hughes is going to resume after that lunch break. You know, we were talking about kind of, you know, the reason why Dr. Hughes is on the stand. And what was interesting to note, and we talked a little bit about this, is this is kind of like blind testimony in that, you know, she doesn't know the nuances, and that's part of a, you know, a strategy for the prosecution. When it comes to the cross-examining of this type of witness, though, you know, what kind of line of questioning do you think that the defense will take with her to try and poke holes in what she's talked about in terms of, you know, the dynamic between a victim and an abuser, the sense of hopelessness, the sense that they really can't break the cycle, that they're beholden to that person that they love?
Right. So the weakness in any testimony, such as a witness, as this doctor, is that the doctor hasn't performed an examination on any of the people who have testified. So the doctor, as you said, is sort of testifying in the blind or in a vacuum, and doesn't know that the people who have testified, whether or not they suffer from any disorder the doctor may be discussing. So that's your cross-examination, is you didn't evaluate them. You can't say that this relates to the alleged victims in this case. You can't say it relates to the alleged witnesses in this case. You can't tell us what kind of pressure they were under, whether it was monetary, whether it was psychological, whether it was physical pressure. You're talking about studies of individuals, yet you haven't studied any of these individuals to know that what you're saying is about them. That's what you should expect on cross-examination.
So I know this is a, you know, this is strategic on the part of the prosecution, but what is the advantage to bringing someone on as an expert who has not really met the, you know, some of these key witnesses and gotten to know them? What's the advantage to that?
Well, I think it's a necessary move that the prosecution has to do in this case, because when you have a relationship that exists from, I think it's 20 years before, but it might have only been 6. But when you have a relationship that exists for a long period of time, and you're having people perform acts that seem consensual, you want to be able to show, why would that act have been considered? Why would somebody do that? And so the doctor's talking in generalities, and then you can sort of fit that generality into the testimony that you heard. Like, yeah, now I get why she would engage in those freakouts. Now I understand why she wouldn't tell her family about it. Now I understand, you know, all those facts and circumstances that are the inferences building upon one another, leading to a conviction in this case. I buy it, I get it, I understand it. And the doctor, it's kind of like a paint by colors picture. The doctor's filling in the color that the other participants in the trial laid out there.
You know, Michael, we know that we are expecting to hear from Kid Cudi, but we don't have all of the witnesses. We don't have a comprehensive list. It's not like, you know, this was published and we're anticipating, you know, X, Y, and Z. But from your expert perspective, is there a particular witness that you are very much interested in hearing from, whether that be from the FBI or someone who raided or someone in connection with the bad boy empire, when it comes to, you know, focusing on this case? Who are you most interested in hearing from?
Well, I think in order for the government to really hammer home their case, it's going to have to be somebody from within the structure, within the empire, who says, yes, this did happen. These people were reluctant. These people were told, come in here, engage in these bizarre sexual acts. Don't look at Diddy. Yes, we had to fill a plastic pool with oil. Yes, we had to do all these things. We had to carry suitcases filled with toys from New York to the Bahamas to Miami to wherever they were going. I think when you do that, it's much easier to see the first count, which is a RICO count. It's easier to see the corrupt organization, because that's probably the hardest count to really wrap your head around. The others you can get from the victimization testimony. But I would want somebody from within the organization to sort of tie it all together for me.
Michael, is there anything else that, you're really interested in, hearing or kind of just observing? We saw it last week, Sean Diddy Combs' family, showing up in full force. We saw his mother, we saw his children, we saw, other individuals. Now, not so much. And obviously there is a reason for that. Sean Diddy Combs doing the heart, and all the viewers could see that. As you mentioned, a lot of this is performance based. I mean, this is played out in front of the jury to, try and get a win from either side. When it comes to these sorts of tactics and strategies, what have you found to be the most effective? And also on that note, I'm sure that sometimes these strategies backfire.
Well, I think with any defendant, it's really important to have family in the courtroom, especially somebody like Diddy. We don't necessarily see them entertainers, stars, as human beings, because we put them on a different pedestal. I think it's important to have your family there every single day, because if you see that there's somebody in the courtroom who loves the defendant, and that's what he is, the defendant, and they love him, then he's a human being. He's not just a number. He's not just a case. He's not just an entertainer. He's a tangible, lovable human being who is subject to the frailties that we all are, which is we make mistakes. And maybe he was in a loving relationship and made a mistake and isn't the monster that the government's trying to portray. So I would have my family there every single day en masse, so that the jury sees them. It's also a harder decision to look people in the eye and say your loved one is guilty. So I do think it's very performative, and I would have them there every day if I could.
On that point, though, Michael, a lot of the family members inside that courtroom were his children. And I can't imagine that it's easy to hear these allegations against your father. Could that backfire when the jury sees that his children are listening to this, that they're seeing some of these videos and some of these photos? Could that backfire?
So the answer to that's yes. I mean, unfortunately, everything we do in court is a double-edged sword. Every piece of evidence can be cross-examined. Every testimony can be cross-examined. At the same point in time, your children kind of love you unconditionally, but it may also temper somebody's testimony. Maybe somebody's not going to say as harshly what they would have said about Diddy with his children in the courtroom. I think it has an impact on the jurors, on the people testifying, potentially on the judge. It's beneficial, but it can also be harmful. And yes, of course, it can backfire.
All right, Michael, it's just so interesting. And I do want to just get your hot take, not to put you in the seat right here. We're only in day 8 of testimony, but from what you have seen and heard so far, do you think that he is going to be found guilty on at least one of these counts? Or do you think, from what you're hearing so far, that he might walk free?
So I think that he's not a very likable person to begin with in terms of his name, his reputation. Obviously, there are a bunch of jurors who don't necessarily know him or know him that well. I think that having tried federal cases, having won federal cases, having lost federal cases, I know that they have a 95+ rate of obtaining a conviction. So my money is on the federal government to get a conviction on at least. I don't know about the RICO count, because again, that's a little bit harder, but on the other counts where there has been phenomenal testimony about what people were made to do, I would absolutely think he's going to get convicted on at least 1 or 2 of them.
Wow, so 95%. I mean, I have to imagine, Michael, that the federal government is not going to take up a case that they don't feel like they can win. It doesn't look good on their end. But that is stunning. I mean, we're going to just have to see how it plays out. But that statistic is certainly eye-opening when it comes to, looking ahead. We appreciate you taking the time joining us here. I mean, this is just absolutely fascinating. And no doubt we're going to have you on again to talk more about it.
Would love it. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I did want to just share this live look once again with our viewers right here as we continue to follow the very latest information. And we also invite you to take part in our live stream right here. In fact, I'm just going to go take a quick look at it because, we have asked you if you have any questions, don't hesitate. I mean, this is what we're here for. If you have questions about, the nuances about the eyewitness testimony, legal questions, definitely, put that in the chat. We're going to try and get to them as we can. I mean, so many of you are chiming in, and believe me, we appreciate that. So if I miss something, not intentional, I'm trying to scroll through this, as I am talking. So you know what? I do see Racing Kiddo too. You said, when will the defense have direct examination? We're going to be speaking throughout the day with more attorneys. So don't you worry. I'm going to copy and paste this, Racing Kiddo too. I'm putting this on my list of questions that we're going to get to. So thank you for, participating right here. We're going to continue to take a look at some of the other questions, but seriously, just Slack us, chat with us, do @live_now from Fox on that screen. And, we have that, what kind of questions do you have? And we're going to get to all of those, as soon as we can. And talking about that, coming up in just about 20 minutes, we are going to actually have an inside look, so to speak, of what is going on inside the courtroom. We're going to be speaking with Associated Press reporter Larry Neumeister. He has been inside the courtroom this entire time. And he has the eyes and the ears, so he can really not just shed light on the testimony, but also the demeanor of Sean Diddy Combs, who of his family is there to support. We were hearing from Michael Gottlieb saying it's so important to really show that aspect, especially because of the seriousness of these charges. So we're going to be speaking with Larry at 1 o'clock. So again, in just about 20 minutes. And then also we're going to be speaking with him again once court concludes. So much is happening right now, and I did want to get to that. So I did want to let you know court has recessed for lunch, and we're just going to update that side panel right here just to share that with you as I do that in real time. Is testifying, and we're going to just share that, is going to be back on the stand. Okay, bear with me. I'm doing this in real time, so I appreciate it, but I wanted to get the latest information for you. So she is going to be back on the stand. To talk about traumatic events and the resulting stress. So just taking a look right there. Yep, we're going to update that in real time. You're seeing that change right there. So we appreciate you sticking with us as court is now in recess. But to recap the very latest information right there, as the clinical psychologist taking the stand, she'll be back on the stand in just a little bit. But she continues to testify on behalf of the government in this federal trial, telling the court that she uses multiple sources to confirm her information. She did admit on the stand that she approaches her forensic work for courts, quote, with healthy skepticism, stating and testifying that in cases she reviews police reports, medical records, and educational background to perform a comprehensive evaluation. Now, Jonathan Bach, who is an attorney on Diddy's team, asked Hughes about the concept of malingering, which he claimed was a fancy way of fabricating the facts. So, I'm reading this as we speak. This is just coming in just a few moments ago. So it does appear perhaps that she might be back on the stand. So I'm just working to confirm that with you right here, but that was an update 3 minutes ago, so she might be back from lunch. Now, it's interesting to note because Fox 5 New York, Lisa Evers, a reporter who has been inside the courtroom, shared with us yesterday that the jury actually gets their lunch inside the courtroom. So they are brought lunch because there is so much testimony, as you can imagine, to get through. So they obviously want to make this as efficient as possible. So they don't actually leave the building. They get their lunch brought to them. And so perhaps the court has resumed right now as we're taking a look. Just 4 minutes ago, it does appear that she is being cross-examined by one of the attorneys on Diddy's team right here. So Jonathan Bach, who's an attorney on Diddy's legal team, asked her about the concept of malingering, which he says is a fancy way of fabricating the facts. Hughes says his terminology was not correct, and it's fabricating an emotional response. She had previously explained that she does not have personal knowledge of this case. She hasn't reviewed evidence or assessed anyone involved. So what that means today, it's blind testimony. And we were hearing from Michael Gottlieb, we were hearing from Jeremy Rosenthal, talking about the strategy on this, because, you know, for someone who has not personally met some of those key witnesses right there, you know, we did want to, you know, have that. Also, another person asked, is the family going to be at trial? That's something that Michael Gottlieb mentioned is so important to have. But we are going to ask Larry, once he hops on with us in just about 15 minutes, who has been in the court. So we've seen Sean Diddy Combs' mother, we've seen his children. And, you know, I can't imagine the emotional response that you're hearing, just horrible allegations against your father, you know, someone that I imagine you would look up to and you would admire and maybe even try and emulate. So
yeah, his Diddy's daughters have stated on numerous occasions that in spite of all that is happening, they love their father. He's been good to them and they are supporting him. Big shout out to Granny the Great. Granny the Great, thank you so much. And it's Granny the Great 221. Thank you so much for the $5 super sticker. And also to Galatians 67. Thank you so much. Queens, may your gift return back to you tenfold. Thank you so much for supporting the live goal. We do have a live goal for 10 $5 super chats if you want to participate. We also have a live poll going. Who was Diddy using the stilettos for? I think we anticipated and even expected the baby oil to be found. We are not surprised that there were firearms found. We're not even surprised about the booger sugar that was found on the $100 bill. But stilettos? So far, 25% of you think it was for Cassie. 30% of you think it was for the male Smex workers, but 45% of you who voted think that Diddy was using them stilettos on his damn self. And I might be inclined to agree with you because we already know. And we were reminded in the chat by Galatians 6:7 that all of the family had to surrender their passports. And so they're not able to leave the country right now. I can't imagine that that's too comfortable. Let's see. Some of the other things they talked about is it wasn't just firearms that they found, but they found rifles. And I think the reporter was trying to say AR-15. I think that was what she was trying to articulate. So the guy they're giving immunity to today is the guy who allegedly helped blow up Kid Cudi's car. Oh, interesting. Thank you so much for that tidbit, Superfly. That's coming from Superfly. So I don't know the name of the guy that is testifying, but I did hear that a witness that was testifying was being given immunity, and now we know what it's for. That person is being given immunity because he's testifying about actually following orders directly from Diddy to blow up Kid Cudi's car. Thank you so much, G Squad, for the $5 super sticker and also for being a member, Queen. Thank you, and may your gift return back to you tenfold. So we're going to see some pictures in just a little while of exactly what was found this is Diddy's Miami mansion. So this is what's being testified about now from Homeland Security, is about what was found at Diddy's, or what was confiscated, I should say, during the raid on Diddy's Miami mansion. So we'll get some pictures of that in just a little bit. This is a whole mess. A whole mess. The woman he chose said, but he and Cassie have been broken up for years when his house was raided, right? Absolutely. The raids on his house, I believe, took place in just last year, 2024, about a year ago. And Galatians is saying that the guy who testified today to helping Diddy blow up Kid Cudi's car, he's testifying. He says Diddy did it. He assisted in helping Diddy. Instead of protecting Kid Cudi, he assisted in helping Diddy blow up Kid Cudi's car. So, yep. So that's the report that's coming in. And yeah, Cassie left Diddy in 2018. There were some critics questioning, well, she stated that he R-ed her, and then she was seeming to re-engage with him, even possibly during the time that she was dating her now husband, Alex Fine. And that's what Dr. Hughes is talking about. And that's a big part of the testimony earlier today. And here's something else to consider. Yes, hold on one second. Yeah, I have not either. As a matter of fact, I can take a look at that now. We can take a look to see if we've got like some play-by-play testimony and questions. We'll take a look at that shortly. Superfly says because she was scared to death. But one of the things that's finally being talked about is the fact that here's how wrapped up Cassie was in this whole situation. Here is how much she was affected by the psychological abuse, the emotional abuse, the physical and verbal abuse. She didn't even know that she was a victim. She did not know that she herself was an trafficking victim. She didn't even understand that she herself was trafficked by Diddy because he's Diddy. How can I be trafficked by a celebrity? How can I be trafficked by a celebrity who I'm sleeping with? By a celebrity who's, telling me that he loves me, he's going to help me with my career. He said all that in order, and that was a part of the how can I say, that was a part of the grooming process. Official Dana J has entered the chat. Shout out to Dana J. How are you, my brother? Good to see and hear from you always. Another comment, the woman he chose, Diddy was having freak offs with new women. The shoes were there for their the shoes found were for their costumes. Interesting. Well, I'm gonna tell you, 48% of y'all still think that Diddy's freaky behind was using the stilettos for himself. All right, and 23 of you guys voted. So, but yeah, it is also possible, and that wasn't an option. I did that on purpose. I figured that it was probably for the women attending the FOs. I don't care what people say. That girl had to stay alive. She knows what was done to Kim and other people. Agreed. Absolutely. Absolutely agreed. And because Cassie has been saying all this time where I was his girlfriend, or I was a girlfriend. But the truth of the matter is she wasn't ever really his girlfriend. And I wouldn't even have classified her as a side chick. What he did to her, you don't do to your girlfriend. And what he did to her, you don't even do to the side chick. You do to someone that you want to use for your own personal servitude. And I think that's what was being done. All right, so let's do this. Let's switch gears for a second, and we're going to move into the current. See if we can get a little closer to what's happening currently, and then I will check to see if there's any actual testimony that has been released yet. I'm sure that there is, and so we'll check.
Have from the previous testimony, and take a look at this. This is from the sketch artist Jane Rosenberg right here. You can see Sean Diddy Combs on the lower left-hand side of your screen. I think what has jumped out to so many people is the difference in hair color, and now it's white. His goatee is white. This is video of Cassie Ventura's mother taking the stand right there. That is the male escort known as the Punisher, who spoke at length yesterday about the freak-offs that he says that he was involved with Cassie and with Sean Diddy Combs. Part of that testimony that we heard from the male escort yesterday was at no point did he feel that it was not consensual. He said he did at no point feel there was any discomfort from Cassie. Otherwise, he said that he would have immediately stopped doing what he did. And so there was really explosive testimony yesterday. Today, we are hearing, at least at this point, from experts. We're hearing from the special agent who raided the house. We're hearing from a clinical psychologist yesterday, more of that personal, powerful testimony. Also, there's a sketch of Sean Diddy Combs kind of hunched over, clutching himself. And that was because the temperature that you see it right there. Apparently the temperatures were so cold inside that courtroom that he was just trying to get warm. And that is a photo of his sketch, I should say, of his former personal assistant who also testified yesterday as well. So we're really just in the very beginning hours of this, but I did want to share that with you. This is some video of Cassie Ventura's parents leaving the court right there, arm in arm. And we were hearing from Cassie's mom yesterday on the stand. She only testified for about 15 minutes and was not cross-examined. But she testified that Cassie reached out to her worried that Sean Diddy Combs was going to release 2 sex tapes and demanded $20,000 really in restitution. This was when they were on break, and Sean Diddy Combs, she testified, was very upset that she was dating Kid Cudi, and that's why he wanted that money. He wanted to recoup the costs of what he had spent on her. Cassie's mom says that she then wired the money to Bad Boy Enterprises, but then about 4 to 5 days later, that money was returned. She also said she has no record of that transaction. So this is video of the male escort known as the Punisher walking out after court. He testified for quite a length of time, more than 1 hour, detailing in length the freak off situations that he engaged in, stating that this lasted for months until he was no longer asked to join Cassie and Sean Diddy Combs. He said in the very beginning, Sean Diddy Combs, he didn't know who they were, and Sean Diddy Combs, covered his face initially during these freak offs, and then finally felt comfortable enough to wear a baseball cap. But perhaps some of that crucial testimony is that he did say that at no point did he feel that there was, any sort of discomfort on Cassie's part right here. Experts, though, say that the testimony from Cassie Ventura's mother, Regina Ventura, could be very damaging because it talks about money being exchanged and Diddy allegedly threatening to release sex tapes unless he received that $20,000. So that is according to her. You can see her walking down the street right there, arm in arm with her husband. So right now on the stand is Dr. Don Hughes, who is a clinical psychologist. I'm just going to refresh all the latest information right here because I want to give that to you. We do get minute by minute updates right here, so bear with me. Okay, so it does say that Sean Diddy Combs' defense attorney has spoken. It says that he spoke outside of court. Now, unfortunately, we've been combing our live looks right here. We don't have a live look outside of court, so it's unclear as to when he may have made those comments, if they were even captured on a camera right here. And we're taking a look. We don't have a live look. Otherwise, of course, we would bring you one. And as soon as we get one back, of course, we're going to show that to you. But this is what he spoke with. He actually spoke with Fox News's CB Cotton earlier this morning outside court, saying, quote, "It's a long trial and we're just getting started. And we have a lot of witnesses to go. We have a lot of weeks to go. And as the summer gets hotter, I'm sure so will the trial." So we are expecting up to 8 weeks of testimony. We are in day 8, so we have just barely begun. We are going to be covering all of it right here on our streaming YouTube page every day that there is testimony. So we invite you to stay with us as we continue our coverage right here. I am going to just leave you for a moment with the very latest information. I'm going to be updating it as the minutes go on with the very latest information as you are taking a live look right here at the skyline of downtown New York City. That testimony with Dr. Don Hughes continuing at this hour.
Yes, I can. Thanks. Okay, that's fine.
All right, so we do want to head straight to Larry Neumeister, a reporter with the Associated Press right there. Larry, thank you for joining us as we take a live look at the skyline of New York City. It is a dreary and pretty much awful day right there with the rain. So thank you for braving the elements for us, stepping outside. Give us the layout of the land as we're currently hearing from the clinical psychologist. Before we get to the testimony, share with us the demeanor, the mood of Sean Diddy Combs. And did any of his family members show up? That's a question that we've been getting from our viewers.
Not many today. No, it's a pretty empty row of people that normally are from his family. Although, as one court officer told me at one point, he's like, a lot of people are saying they're with his family. But it turns out that it's a quieter day in the courtroom to begin with. So it would explain why there'd be fewer people attending overall. But there's still plenty of attention being paid. And certainly when the psychologist spoke, I saw jurors taking a lot of notes. And this is a psychologist who wasn't privy to any of the facts of the case. She hasn't spoken to Combs or Cassie or any of the witnesses and admitted that she knew very little about the case. She's just talking about general psychology type things.
So, given that you were noticing that the jury was taking a lot of notes, do you feel like they were really connecting with what she was talking about in terms of trauma bonding, in terms of the control and the power and kind of the dynamic, if you will, between, maybe an abuser and a victim?
Well, as I looked at the jurors, there's a lot of middle-aged and some older people on the jury. And I was thinking to myself, probably a lot of them have suffered their own traumas and were kind of fascinated by hearing from a professional, as well as how it relates to all the evidence they've heard of so much trauma from Cassie and the other witnesses describing what they had witnessed, the violence they had witnessed. I'm sure jurors kind of appreciated hearing a professional give their depiction of it. Of course, this was a professional who's hired by the prosecutors for $6,000 today. So, it's someone who's there to sort of support the prosecution's case.
Right. You got to take it maybe with a little bit of grain of salt, since she is getting a paycheck from the prosecution. What I think is interesting, and you mentioned this, is that this is blind testimony. She never personally spoke with Cassie. And you talked about generalities and how a lot of people probably have gone through their own sorts of trauma, able to, use what she has said in her expert testimony and apply it to their own lives. And sometimes that can be very powerful when it creates that level of understanding and insight, saying, you know what, I too, can understand where all of this is coming from. We first we're hearing from this special agent, sharing all of these pictures about what they saw. What was the reaction from the jury then? I know this was kind of they were finishing up the testimony. Did they seem bored? Did they seem interested?
Well, that's an interesting thing about this jury, is that they have paid close attention to everything throughout. They've been very attentive, taking lots of notes with the psychologist, but with everyone else too. And when the agent was testifying about the raid on Combs' Star Island residence in Florida, they were paying close attention. They were looking right at him, and he showed them pieces of evidence. He showed them a gun. He showed them bullets. He showed them various things that had been found in Combs' home. And, they paid a lot of attention. And there was a moment, it actually occurred yesterday in the
I'm going to pause here for just a second because I believe Superfly is going to be calling in soon. So definitely, yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts. Where do you think we are with this Diddy case? I've been pretty vocal in some of my thoughts, and despite the defense's best attempt to discredit witnesses, and yes, they've had some valid points, I still think that the prosecution is doing a great job. I believe with the witnesses that have come forward that you can't unhear what you've heard and you can't unsee what you've seen. And so I still think that the prosecution is winning this one. Now, the ties can turn at any time. There is some updates from a little bit of an update from inside the courtroom, as was said by Inner City Press, which is a great resource. It's been a little bit quiet in the courtroom. Yesterday was an emotionally charged day with Cassie's mother giving her testimony and one of Diddy's assistants giving his testimony. But Superfly, the link is open. And so you are welcome to call in at any time and we will continue on until you're ready to call in. You said that you've got some things that nobody, you want to say some things that nobody, not even the courts are saying. And so please come on and tell us your thoughts. Some of the things that Superfly has put in the chat is the fact that Diddy has been a serial artist for 30 years. And I actually have a video on my YouTube channel where I go into this, and I actually mentioned that. And this, I believe, was it was in 2024 when I talked about that. So I'll make sure I'll put a link to that video in the description box on this one, and I'll link it up. Once the live is over, I'll put a link to it within the video itself. Diddy is the closest to the devil in human life. Joanna AW says the stilettos were for Meek Mills. Meek Mills and Usher need to be charged too. I'm so surprised that Justin Bieber is choosing so far not to testify and has not been subpoenaed. He has stated that there are real victims in this case, of which he is not one. But yeah, I have a real problem with the fact that Usher was seemingly taking the brunt of whatever Diddy was doing, and then he found someone else to take his place in the person of Justin Bieber. I mean, Justin Bieber, just very, very talented young man, and for him to have gone through what he went through was awful. His kids know the history. They got to get real jobs now, baby. Inmate justice is coming. And again, Superfly, if you're still with us, please most definitely call in. All you have to do is click on the link that you see. And if I can, I will pin that link to the chat. Let's see if I can do that. Okay, so it is pinned to the chat, the call-in link. Okay, you just click on that. You're going to log in the same way you would log into YouTube, and you need to click out of the actual live in order to come in the back office if you've never done it. All right, let's keep going. This gentleman here, he is, if you've ever heard of Inner City Press, he is the Inner City Press guy. He's the person behind Inner City Press. And he's got an ebook, actually, that he did on week 1 of the trial that's available on Google Play, for those of you who might be interested in that. No, you don't. She says, I don't have StreamYard. You don't need StreamYard. Just click on the link. And then, okay, let's do this. I'll make it simple for you. Let me give you a number where you can call, and I'll just put it on speaker. We can do that if that's easier for you. That's one thing that StreamYard might want to consider doing. They might want to make it easier for people to actually call in and not just utilizing the link. So I'll get a phone number where you can actually call in, Queen, and you can tell us your thoughts. Okay. See if I can get that info. Okay, so I will put the number in the chat. You can call this number. All right, and then no, you won't be on camera. You don't have to be on camera. It's just going to be your voice. Okay, so I'm putting a number in the chat. You can call this number, and if you should call this number, I will just put it on speaker for all to hear, and it'll just be your voice. Okay. All right, so there is the number there. All right. And what I'll do is I'm going to replace that message with this one. Hang on one second. Let's do it again. So here is a call-in phone number. All right. And you can tell us your thoughts, because I know you got something to say. So I really would like to hear what you have to say. And then we'll continue on. All right. Okay, so it is there in the chat. You can call in at that number, and you can be on speakerphone if you, because you fired up, I can tell. All right, so, all right, let's see. This is Wisdom's daughter. Hello.
Superfly.
Yep. Oop. Sorry, Superfly. One more time. I hit the wrong button. Superfly, I'm so sorry. Try again. Call back. Butterfingers, guys. So sorry. It happens. Butterfingers. All right, let's see if she'll call back. That was my bad. Let's see if I can. Let's see. Let's see if I can get her back. Let's see. All right, I'm trying to see if we can get her back, guys. Okay. Let's see. We're gonna try to get Superfly back on. Okay. I will play this in the meantime until we get her back on. Oh, there she is. All right. Okay, let's see. Superfly, this is Wisdom's daughter. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
How are you? Yep, you're live. You had some things to say, and I was reading some of your comments. Queen, go ahead, Superfly. You are live.
Okay, so what I want to know, and nobody's ever talked about this, is the manifesto or the logs from that jet, his jet. If he's been trafficking, where's the logs to that jet? Because you know people like Young Miami was trafficking the pink cocaine and things like that from Miami to Los Angeles. Do you remember?
I remember.
Yeah. So who's all been on that jet? Besides Cassie? Besides Young Miami? There's other people been on that jet.
You bring up a
So
very, very good point.
Where's
Yeah.
the log to the jet?
The manifest.
That links up to all these. Yes. Nobody's talked about that. Have you noticed that?
I've
no
noticed.
Lawyers, no DA, no courts, nobody has said anything about that. So I'm beginning to wonder if that's going to be the end bomber at the end with maybe Jonathan Adi, because the simple fact is Jonathan Adi was going all over the place with these people.
Wow. And official Dana J added to the chat a comment for you. He said he talked about it on his channel last night, and apparently the flight logs have disappeared. Flight logs have disappeared. So we have to ask KK. KK, where's the flight manifest? Where's your passenger log? By law, you have to have a log.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Because anybody, even if it's like a private jet, like it is, it still has to have, by law, who's been on that plane. And you know what I'm saying? The drug mule, where he's been trafficking drugs and carrying all these drugs from one state to another at all his events.
Absolutely. Right? No, you're right. And my question is, even hold on a second. Dana J says even the pilot has disappeared. I think he meant pilot. He says even the pilot has disappeared. What's interesting is that whatever airport they're flying out of, I would imagine that they also would need to have the manifest. And so, so that's a great question. Where is the pilot? Where is the pilot? Right? And of course, and
have you noticed, like by Young Miami. She kind of like disconnected herself. There
She's
for a
been
while,
quiet.
she was after the witnesses
Mm-hmm.
of like the one girl that she told her, "Well, you better to get an abortion, this, that, whatever."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's the witness that is missing, right?
Correct. Well,
But
no,
that is not
she's
testifying.
no, that's a different witness. So the witness that currently is not cooperating after wanting to use her legal name, that's Gina Hoon. She's the young lady who was dating Diddy at the same time that he was messing around with Cassie, and she's one of the ones that Cassie found out that Diddy was messing around with. And all this is alleged. This is a commentary channel, so we are giving our opinions. Nothing being stated on this channel is for a fact.
Everything is allegedly.
Yeah.
We're just trying, yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, this is for our entertainment purposes only.
Yep. But no,
And
you're absolutely right. No,
Let me tell you this.
Yeah.
Jonathan Adi, when he went to the News Nation, shout out to News Nation for getting that interview. But do they realize that they don't have to fly John Adi to the courts? They can do the veto where he just testifies at the court on the video.
I wonder, yeah, I mean, if that is correct, then I wonder why they're not doing that with Gina Hoon, because I really want to hear, what she was going to say. I really think that Diddy may have gotten to her. I do,
I think somebody scared her.
Yeah, it sounds about right. And, she did that interview with Tasha K. And so that testimony does exist. You will have to find out if it's actually going to be played in court. But really, really interesting. You've got, witnesses that are starting to back off. So, yeah. But these are really good points. What happened to the pilot? What happened to the flight manifest?
Well, here's the thing too. Do you notice when they said that his jet was overseas somewhere for a minute,
mm-hmm.
and they came back, and it was told not to be around New York the day that he was arrested, and it was over a bridge. It was over near. All he would have to do was go to the nearest bridge, go over to the nearest bridge, and it would have been right there. That's why they arrested him.
Wow.
One of the reasons.
Well,
because
mm-hmm.
it was not supposed to be landing over there or near New York. That jet was not, and that jet got spotted by Homeland Security, and then Homeland Security said, "Oh no, he's going to try to take off," and they went and got him.
Right. And see, the funny thing also is that Diddy claims that he was in New York because he was planning to surrender. And let's just entertain that as fact for a moment. So Diddy's planning to surrender. So he's thinking that he's just going to go to the police station and turn himself in, not thinking that they were going to come to the hotel where he was staying and raid the hotel, because they also found contraband at the hotel, $9,000 in cash in a fanny pack. They found booger sugar. They found baby oil in the tub. They found baby oil on the floor, baby oil all over that nasty hotel room. Okay.
Yes. It was the freak off starter kit.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh. The freak off starter kit. You know what? Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
That's the freak off starter kit, baby.
Freak off starter. You know what? Okay, we gonna have some t-shirts made. So I heard that Diddy's team or his people are paying people $20 an hour to wear free puff t-shirts. So
well, I'm sorry, but I wouldn't even do it for $20 an hour, let alone. You know what I'm saying? That's disgusting.
No, definitely couldn't do it. But you know what? There's some unemployed people out there right now that would be more than happy to wear. Now listen, they in their mind they'll be saying Diddy did it, but they're wearing a free puff t-shirt because they want that $20 an hour. But all right, Creed, thank you so very much. I'm going to
we're gonna have to look into that jet.
For sure.
There's
Absolutely.
something up with that jet.
we got to talk about it. So maybe Dana J and I will do a collab, and we'll talk about it some more. We got to get it on the radar. Where is the manifest, and why is the pilot? Why has the pilot gone silent? Why is Young Miami silent?
Why isn't he being testified for flying that jet everywhere?
Right, he hasn't testified.
He trafficked the cocaine and
the mule,
all the drugs and the mules, and
the mule hasn't testified. Mary J. Blige is acting like Diddy who. So yeah, it's a lot of foolery. It's a lot of foolery going on. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for calling in, Superfly. I appreciate it.
I'll talk to you later.
All right, Queen. Be well.
Right, bye-bye.
All right. That was great. So so we'll Danny and I will get together and talk about a collab. And on that note, we definitely have some updates, some more stuff going on with this. And in just a moment, we're going to look at some pictures of what was found. But let's finish hearing from Inner City Press.
Afternoon, and I haven't spoken to you since, but there was a moment where Combs actually kind of put his hands up to his covering his eyes at a moment, and seemed slightly distressed when they were showing things like the way they used a armored vehicle to ram through the gate to even enter his residence. And so that was kind of fascinating because he has shown almost no emotion. If I did an imitation of Combs in court, it would be like this. It would be, that's pretty much it.
I mean, that's fascinating.
Talk a little to his lawyers. He's looking around, but he's not muttering things. He's not showing any anger. He's not showing really much emotion at all. You see him writing notes to his lawyers. He'll occasionally speak to his lawyers. During a break, he may turn around and, make a gesture toward family or something. But overall, he's been a pretty docile witness. Defendant. And, one thing about the psychologist this morning that kind of fascinated me was she made the point that most people have trouble getting out of any relationships. And even when everything's going great in a relationship, a lot of people have trouble breaking up. And they may stay in a relationship for 6 years where they seem to get along well enough, but have a lot of problems. And there's no violence and no trauma. And she was saying when people have so much trouble getting out of a relationship when everything goes well, you can imagine how difficult it is when there are other factors like trauma and violence they've been subjected to and things like that.
That is just incredible insight, what we're hearing from her. And it's definitely a different angle, right? We're hearing from, maybe these special agents about what they saw. This is definitely a different perspective for the juror right there. Larry, there was a lot of talk about perhaps Kid Cudi was going to testify today. We know that that's not going to be the case. We'll just have to wait, perhaps another day for that to happen. Anyone else that you know of who is going to take the witness stand after Dr. Hughes?
Actually, right before the break, they just took a very half-hour lunch break. Right before that happened, they brought in a witness. He's going to be the next witness, I believe, George Kaplan. He's a former, someone who worked for Combs. And he came in and they asked him, they said, are you planning to take the fifth, and the right to not to answer questions. It's everyone's right not to incriminate themselves. And
so that's the name, Kaplan. That's the name, I guess, of the guy who helped Diddy bomb Kid Cudi's car.
Said yes. And at that point, the judge approved immunity for him so that he can testify about any crimes that he was involved in without facing prosecution of himself. So he will be testifying. We don't know exactly what he might be testifying about, what crimes he could have been involved in. But even in this search of Combs' residence, the agent testified this morning, cocaine was found there, lots of drugs. Certainly any of the employees who were involved in any way with the drugs and such might want immunity if they're going to testify. So, but I don't know anything about exactly what he's going to say he did wrong and the reason that he originally wanted to plead the fifth.
I mean, that's going to be fascinating as well, because I have to imagine that this might point to racketeering and in terms of, how other individuals are involved. So George Kaplan, who used to work for Sean Diddy Combs, is set to testify. You were mentioning he was granted immunity just now because he said he was going to plead the fifth. So definitely fascinating. Also, just to give our viewers a timeline, I mean, I know that, court wrapped up at around 4 p.m. yesterday Eastern time. Do you anticipate kind of that same timeline today? Or do you think it could run longer, maybe shorter?
Well, yes, the judge has said he plans to stop. The first week he went until 5 every day. And he told them ahead of time, we're going 9:30 to 5. But he said the rest of the trial, we are going to be finishing each day at 3 o'clock. We're going to start at 9 in the morning, and he gives them a shorter little lunch break, and there are fewer breaks, but he goes straight forward to 3. And he said that if it turns out they're getting behind on witnesses, he may start stretching it to 3:30 or 4. But then one of the defense lawyers said, well, if you plan to do that, please let us know in advance. Don't spring it on us that day. So it looks like court will be ending at 3 o'clock each day.
Okay. I don't want to keep.
All right, so I've got a couple of updates for you. So Diddy has a 10th lawyer, okay? So now his legal team is 10 people strong. His new lawyer is Jonathan Bach, who's the husband of Alexandra Shapiro. Now, she was the defense, part of the defense for the Trump SPAC trial. Okay, this is according to Inner City Press. So here's a couple of things that has been going on in the courtroom today. So I'll share that with you all. And let's see. All right. So earlier today, when Dr. Hughes took the stand, I'm sure Mr. Bott can raise that in cross. Apparently, there were some questions regarding text messages. So the judge asked, what about these text messages involving Miss Ventura and buying pharmaceuticals in Boston? The assistant U.S. attorney said, we think it's irrelevant, but if they redacted it, it is not hearsay, that she was in Boston on her own. I think that's why Mr. Agnifilio wants it in. And the judge says, I'll think on it. And he says that that's when he said that when Dr. Hughes is on the stand, that Mr. Bott can raise whatever issue he had in cross-examine. So here's some other things coming. So Tenny Garagos said, you found 6 people and you kept them in handcuffs for an hour. This is when they were cross-examining Agent Gannon. No, ma'am. There was one individual who wasn't happy with us and wasn't cooperating, so we kept him in handcuffs longer. Garagos, however you pronounce her name, because he wasn't happy with the cuffs. Later on, she says, in planning the search, you knew that none of the targets of the investigation would be there. The prosecution objects, the judge overrules. Agent Cannon said the plan was to have him not there, but we had contingencies in case he was. All right, so the deputy says, may we take the sealed exhibit down? Garrigo says, Agent Cannon, you live in Florida. Don't many people have weapons in their homes there? Objection by the prosecution. The judge asked her to rephrase. She says, do you have guns in your home? He says, yes. And she says, no further questions. Again, that was with the Homeland Security agent. So then one of the prosecutors said, cut off the screens. They didn't want the exhibit seen. And then Tenny Garrigo says, please don't say the names of the people in this photograph other than my client. Don't talk about it. And then the prosecution says, may we confer with counsel? The judge says you may. And then we've got Dr. Don Hughes took the stand, and we've heard a little bit about what was said there. Then they asked for a break, and they bring in George Kaplan. So George Kaplan invokes his Fifth Amendment right. And then the prosecution says, did you receive a subpoena? So George Kaplan, the guy that is saying now that he blew up Diddy's, not Diddy, but Kid Cudi's vehicle, he has received immunity, and he was subpoenaed. So that's what happened. And I guess they wanted him to talk, so they gave him immunity. So don't lose the will. On the desk is George Kaplan with his immunity agreement. And so he did receive immunity. So that is not alleged. That did happen. And then there was a question by Jonathan Bach. Didn't you help write the briefs? And the prosecution says, can we have a sidebar? The judge says, yes, I'll keep a brief, shorter than last. And then they have a sidebar about, I guess, some documentation or this guy getting immunity. There's a little bit of back and forth with that. And then Bach says, did you discuss the topics with the prosecutors? Now, he's asking this question to Dr. Hughes. With all due respect, it was mostly me educating them. Bach says, but you know nothing about the case. Were you advising them on how to present evidence in domestic violence cases? So you can see that his team is being a little petty right there. Okay, they might be being a little bit more than a little petty right there with their foolishness. But it is a good point, you know, and the reality is she did not necessarily speak to or examine Cassie directly. She's just speaking in general terms, which I still feel apply in this case. All right, let's see what else. So Mark Agnifilio says the proffered email chain is about Gina and Gina is out of the case. She's not coming. Okay. And then the prosecution says, well, she's in the indictment. Agnifilo says they could get her here and they're choosing not to. I'll submit a letter by 10 p.m. And then a letter is submitted regarding, I don't know if I can I read this? Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll read this. Let me see if I can share this with you guys. Hang on. There we go. Okay. So on May 15, 2025, this is an email. Says the Honorable Arun Subramanian, and then they have the address to the courthouse. This is regarding a press application to docket and unseal the government's and the defense's communication to chambers on evidentiary and other issues in USA versus Sean Combs. Intercity Press has been covering the above captioned case like many others since its indictment. This morning before the jury came in, both the government and the defense referred to multiple communications to the court about evidentiary and other issues, but these are not on the public docket on PACER. And I remember him talking about this. He had to file a motion to get some things released to the public docket that they were trying to keep private. So that was his letter actually. So we don't have to read that. But I'll keep going and see if there's any other updates. So I don't see too many other updates, but one thing that I did want to share with you is because there were rumors about something that happened between Cassie and Nicki Minaj, where Nicki Minaj was telling Cassie, like, well, you know, why don't you leave and yada, yada, yada. And there were some rumors around that. And Nicki Minaj never spoke to Cassie. Any rumors that were being said that Nicki Minaj was going to testify and all these things, no, that was all rumor. Kia says, I want to know more about Diddy's mom. What is her past like? What did she teach him? Every video I saw of them, they kiss right on the lips. Is that weird to y'all? Kia, I'm going to satisfy your curiosity and we will plan something in the next couple of days because I've been wondering that myself and kind of doing some research. So, but I need to have everything together and then we can do a live on that. All right, let's get back to these photos. So I'm going to show you, you guys are going to see the photos now from what was confiscated.
Keep you too long, Larry, but I do want to let our viewers know that you will be joining us after court wraps up today to give us another recap and a look ahead towards tomorrow. Thank you so much. I know it is rainy. It is not the best of weather, so we appreciate you braving the elements, and we will absolutely talk to you in just a few hours once court wraps up.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Larry. And this is a live look right here. And you can see the elements that Larry has been braving right here. You actually saw right behind him a lot of folks with umbrellas. The next person that we are expecting to hear testify. Attorney Jonathan Bach right now, talking about coping mechanisms, talking about the use of or with tinted windows. And, you know, I was talking on air at the time. I said, well, obviously this has someone to do with the, you know, with the case, is all of the photographers were filming this. And then, yes, it turned out to be the Punisher right there. So you never know who's leaving court. You never know if they're going to say anything. And we'll definitely be getting that to you as soon as we get that other live look. I'm refreshing all of the information right here, and I'm taking a look at it right now. The very latest information, and Larry was the one who brought this to us, is that Sean Diddy Combs' former employee, George Kaplan, invoked his Fifth Amendment right not to incriminate himself. So he took the stand right before the lunch break, explaining that he was there because of a subpoena. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been there. And he said yes when asked if he planned to invoke his Fifth Amendment right. The prosecution telling Kaplan that if he is granted immunity, he will be forced to answer questions. And he says that he understood that. So the immunity order was then presented to Kaplan's attorney for review. The judge signed the immunity and it was entered into the record. So we are expecting his former employee to testify. It's going to be very interesting to see, because obviously he said that he didn't want to talk, but now that he has immunity, he's protected. He is going to be sharing his truth, so to speak. Also on the stand as well was Dr. Dawn Hughes, a clinical psychologist who testified on behalf of the government. Larry was mentioning she is being paid $6,000 by the federal government to be a witness. So you got to take that, of course, with a grain of salt. She's obviously being paid by the federal government, but she did provide blind testimony, meaning that she has not seen any details about what has happened in court. She doesn't have any personal knowledge of this case, and she hasn't reviewed evidence or assessed anyone involved. So she hasn't talked to Cassie's mom, you know, and anyone involved in this case. So she was on the stand for quite some time, you know, at least going back at least 1 hour or so. Just about an hour that she has been speaking. So, closer, maybe an hour and a half or so. But now it appears as though, you know, there was that brief lunch recess. And
while we're waiting for those pictures to come up, let me tell you a little bit about Cassie's mom's testimony. Cassie's mom was fierce on the stand. I did a 10-minute update, 10-minute recap on Bad Girls Talk about it. Cassie's mom was not afraid. Okay. She stood firm, and she testified with so much authority and so much power and conviction that the defense did not even want to cross-examine. Like they were like, okay, no further questions, and kind of put their head down. But she talked about Diddy basically sending sending Cassie an email threatening her life and saying that, I guess this was after he found out that Cassie was dating or messing around with Kid Cudi, and asking the family, you've got all this money and you're asking Cassie's family for $20,000. $20,000, or he, you know, was threatening Cassie's life. Okay, here we go. Here is what was found.
Handgun. That's something that they say that they seized during their raid. Also, the jury saw photos of ammunition, of sex toys, of, you know, baby oil, of stilettos. We were sharing that with you, about 10 pairs of platform shoes and stilettos right there. So did want to share just one of those photos with you. That's the handgun, you know, and we were also hearing from the special agent yesterday about some of the other guns that they seized, you know, from some of the other different homes from Sean Diddy Combs right there. So that is the handgun that the special agent testified that they recovered from inside the Star Island house right there. This is a 45 caliber gun. There is a serial number on that. The special agent Gerard Gannon testifying that along with this gun, they also found a magazine with ammo inside a bag. The magazine had 9 bullets inside of it. And he also testified that a box of 45 caliber bullets were also found as well. The prosecution showing that picture of the box of bullets. And you can see some of those stiletto platform heels in this compilation right here. You can see some of the part of the guns right there. You can.
There ain't no way. Ain't no way. Really? And of course, they would have to be red stilettos. And let me just say this. Okay, so 44 of y'all voted. Okay. The question was, the poll was, who was Diddy using the stilettos for? Was it for Cassie himself or the male Smex workers? Well, guess what? 52% of y'all said that Diddy was using the stilettos for himself. Really, Diddy? You know how to walk in those? Well, listen, we done seen Diddy do the strangest things. He wears wigs. All right. He's kissing men on the mouth. He's conducting meetings in an open bathrobe with no clothes underneath, just as naked as the day he was born. Yeah, he's asking other recording artists why they don't want to party with him, where they been, because they ain't really party. Yeah, we know what they talk about. They want to know why you ain't been to the freak off. So now we know when Diddy say, well, you ain't really party with me, that means you ain't really freaked off with me. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, this is what was found. These are some of the other weapons that were found. They did find some rifles. You can see all the pills there. And yeah, Juice Poetry just entered the chat. What's going on, King? All right, let's continue.
See the pills, and I was mentioning this, that Special Agent Gannon had testified that he found a number of pills inside, and saying that they were, a multitude of colors. You can see, this is a photo from the federal government showing the various colors: blue, pink, white, yellow, saying that they also found a bag of pink pills, a bag of white powder, a $100 bill. Gannon testified was also found inside the bag, testing positive for cocaine and ketamine. So the pills are there on your lower right-hand side. And then the upper right-hand side, some of those like high stiletto platform heels, Gannon stated and testified, in addition to the photo that you're seeing there of those red stiletto platforms, agents also found 12 other pairs of platform heels, also finding some other shoes and boots. And inside one of the boots, Gannon claimed they found 3 different cell phones. Also, they found a Gucci bag that he claims they found a variety of pills inside, as well as powder. And then you can also see a photo of some other guns that they previously recovered from, inside some of the homes that they had raided right there. So just some of the photos that the jury has been seeing. This is evidence presented by the federal government right there. So that was a part of the testimony that we first heard this morning. Also to note is that Agent Jared Gannon testified that at least one individual who was home at the time of the raids on Sean Diddy Combs' property, quote, wasn't too happy and would not cooperate. Now, he didn't say exactly who that was.
Now, if that was the Los Angeles home, I believe that person they're referring to was Stevie J. Because if you guys remember, when they raided Diddy's Los Angeles home, I believe it was the LA home. Or maybe I'm confusing it with the Miami. One of the homes that they raided, only Stevie J was home. Kia said, Jesus, 12 flares. Yeah, and they keep saying platforms, but stilettos, 12 pairs of platform stilettos. Listen, I wear platform stilettos too. The platform helps because walking in real 8-inch stilettos without that platform, baby, nope. Uncle Willie is now trying on high heels. You see, Diddy, you see what you done there? You got Uncle Willie trying to try on some red stilettos now. Uncle Willie, you gonna break your damn neck if you don't stop with the tomfoolery. But anyway, yeah, so one of the homes, the first home that was raided, only Stevie J was at the house. And no, he said he was not going to cooperate. He wasn't speaking to anybody. He's like, nah, do what y'all got to do, but I'm not going to help you do it. Yeah, Stevie J was in Miami. Thank you. So, and I believe this is what was confiscated from the Miami house. And so, yes. And let me say mansion. Let me just be clear, not even a house, mansion. All right. Let's keep it going. I think they've got just a couple more updates. Let me see if I can find that for you in terms of some other things that were found.
Closest that we are going to get. But that's why, you know, we really depend on journalists like Larry Newmeister, who is inside the courtroom right now, taking notes, observing, you know, and sharing all of that with us when they are able to step outside, which is pretty amazing. So we are continuing to follow all of that for you right now as we're taking a live look. And I'm always updating and refreshing our, you know, live updates for you. So let's see what we have right now. So it does still appear that Dr. Hughes is still there testifying. No specific updates on that testimony. She is being cross-examined right now as she continues to take the stand, talking about, you know, the psychology behind some of these, you know, cases of abuse. And another one right here. Are allowed inside the courtroom. This is because of federal law. So this is the closest that we are going to get. But that's why, you know, we really depend on journalists like Larry Newmeister, who is inside the courtroom right now, taking notes, observing, you know, and sharing all of that with us when they are able to step outside Island Mansion. And we did share with you some of the photos of what they saw. And we do have another one to share with you. We showed you some photos of the stilettos. We showed you some photos of, you know, the guns and the pills. This is another one right here, part of the testimony right here. These are multiple bottles, as you can see, of
multiple bottles of baby oil and Astroglide. I mean, how many bottles of Astroglide do you need? Okay, how many? Let me see if we can count how many. I'm gonna count how many bottles of baby oil I see, and y'all tell me if y'all counted different. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Because I'm counting the pink caps. So I'm counting 20 pink caps. Some bottles of baby oil a little bit different. Like this one here looks like it's a pump. It's the baby oil pump. Okay. Because that's what happens when you're lazy. You just want to, you know, you don't want to unscrew the cap. All right. And then I see this one looks like a flip cap. All right. And then let's count the purple tops with all the doggone Astroglide. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and there seems to be 10, 11, or maybe even 12 underneath here. And then there's one over here. So about at least 13 bottles of Astroglide. You nasty, Diddy. You're nasty. And what the, I mean, I thought this was like plastic food or fake food. Are these butt beads? What is that? I'm seeing what looks like maybe a blindfold, some type of a pink silky thing, and something green with the hole in it. What the hell were they doing at these FOs? And then there's a box here that says E942 nitrous oxide. Food grade nitrous. What the hell are you doing with nitrous? Diddy, damn. What is nitrous oxide? Let's see what nitrous is most used for. Diddy got to be the nastiest damn person. Nitrous oxide, often called laughing gas, is primarily used for its medical applications, particularly in dentistry and surgery, due to its anesthetic and pain-reducing properties. It is also used as an oxidizer in rocket motors. Additionally, there's a recreational use of nitrous oxide, though it can be dangerous and has negative health consequences. Recreational use. While not medically intended, nitrous oxide is sometimes inhaled recreationally, often for whippets. or excuse me, often from whippets, which are small canisters. This is a dangerous practice due to the potential for frostbite and other health risks, as well as the potential for dependency. Well, that's what happened to your boy Ye. He got hooked on laughing gas. And now him and his wife are trying to sue the dentist that he paid $500,000 to put titanium on his bottom row or his top row, whatever row he got it in there, because he wanted metal teeth like a damn vampire. Okay. You need to take your crazy behind the church. Okay. Anyway. So yeah, about 13 bottles of Astroglide. I done forgot the count on the bottles of baby oil. Y'all should have thrown it up in the chat. I done lost count. And we over here using laughing gas for its pain reducing properties. What is Diddy doing over there? Okay, I guess because he was intending to use the Astroglide, and whatever he was using the Astroglide for, you was going to need some nitrous because it was going to be a little painful. I cannot. I'm trying to make light of a very unnerving, disturbing, and very serious situation. All right, let's hear from some more experts and let's get off of the Astroglide.
You can ask me.
So I do want to bring in Mario Gallucci, who is a longtime New York City criminal defense attorney. Mario, we appreciate you taking the time to hop on with us here as we continue our coverage of day 8 of testimony in Sean Diddy Combs' sex trafficking trial. On the stand right now, a clinical psychologist. She has been on the stand for a considerable amount of time right now, being cross-examined by the defense. You know, in this line of questioning, obviously they're trying to poke holes, through her testimony. And to note, she was paid $6,000 by the federal government to testify. When it comes to discrediting or kind of, creating doubt with jurors in terms of what this expert witness is sharing, what's the strategy behind that?
So you would assume thank you for having me on, by the way. You would assume that the defense also has their own clinical psychologist that's going to go against their clinical psychologist. So one of the things you try to avoid, and people think is the one thing you're going to go, oh, you were paid, who paid you, how much did they pay you? Well, your clinical psychologist is going to go through that same type of cross-examination. So you got to be very careful with those types of questions. So it's very important that you know what their clinical psychologist is going to say and that you're prepared by your clinical psychologist on the questions to ask. For example, if it was a DNA expert and you're talking about DNA transfer, a typical lawyer doesn't know the science behind that. Typical lawyer doesn't know the science between clinical psychology. So what you would do is you get prepared by your own clinical psychologist, and they tell you, what the direction to go in, what questions to ask. One of the best things to do is to attack their pedigree. Where did they go to school? Have they published any articles? How many times have they testified? How many times have they testified for the defense? How many times have they testified for the prosecution? So those are probably the most important things to try to get out as a defense attorney when you're going to get up and do cross-examination.
You brought up a point, and I appreciate you doing so when it came to the fact that obviously the defense is going to have their own clinical psychologist. They're going to go through this whole line of questioning. One of our viewers who asked a question on our live YouTube stream, Racing Kiddo 2, asked, when will the defense have their own expert witnesses and that direct examination? Is there a specific timeline? Could it be weeks from now before they're able to present their own experts and witnesses?
The defense has to do nothing. I mean, it's up to the government to prove their case beyond the reasonable doubt. You would assume, though, in a case like this, that they're going to present the defense. The defense will start once the prosecution rests. So if Diddy's team, and I'm sure they have hired their own doctor experts, they will testify as soon as the government rests in this case. So you're looking at middle of June.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, again, we're looking at potentially 8 weeks of testimony. So it's going to be lengthy. Looking ahead, though, this is really interesting, is one of Combs's former employees, George Kaplan. He is set to testify after the, the cross-examination of the clinical psychologist, Dr. Hughes, wraps up. Initially he said that he would plead the fifth. And then he was granted immunity. When it comes to what all of that means and the significance of that, when is a witness granted immunity? What are the circumstances? Obviously, he indicated that he wasn't going to speak because he didn't want to incriminate himself.
So the government had to make a judgment call here. They had to make a decision on whether they're going to allow this witness to testify on their behalf and forgive him for all of the wrongdoing he has done. So by granting him immunity, they are allowing him to testify without the specter of being prosecuted for his own crimes, which is very important to the defense also, because now they get to cross-examine him on all of those crimes and whatever agreement he made with the government to testify. So that's it goes both ways in when you're dealing with a cooperating witness.
Yeah, and I want to ask you about that, because I imagine that the defense would say, "Hey, look, you're probably just saying whatever you want because you're not going to be charged." When it comes to that effective argument, I'm assuming it's relatively common, but how effective is that when you're trying to sully the character of someone who has been granted immunity and is now testifying against their former employer?
You got to demonstrate to the jury that they are doing what they're doing because they're working with the government, that they are worse than your client, that the crimes they would have been charged with are significantly worse, or maybe they're the ones that actually led to your client's involvement in these particular activities. There's a lot to do with a I love when we get a cooperating witness. It's probably the most fun part of our job.
So, you say that, Mario, and my curiosity is piqued. So why do you consider this like one of the most fun parts of your job? What is it that, gets that adrenaline running?
So cross-examination is probably the greatest tool that a defense attorney has. And the cross-examination of a cooperating witness or a rat is you're going to get every single bit of whatever they've done wrong, every bad act, every crime, and you could cross-examine them on every single one of those issues. I recently cross-examined a cooperating witness who attempted to escape from Rikers Island after he signed a cooperation agreement. And that went really far with the jury. They signed a cooperation agreement with the government, and the government still kept that cooperation agreement in place, even though he tried to escape from jail. So credibility is always an issue, and that is the greatest credibility attack one could possibly make.
Yeah, and you used a very powerful word right there that resonates, I'm sure, with a lot of people, which is the word rat. You never want to be associated with that. So what's the benefit? What's the benefit for someone to get immunity if they're going to be, their character, no doubt, is going to be in question?
They don't go to jail. They have their freedom. They're more than likely that the agreement that the government reached with the cooperator is going to be given to the defense. The defense now could pick apart that agreement. You made an agreement with the prosecutor. You agreed with the government that you would testify. In exchange for that agreement, instead of going to jail for 20 years, you're going home tonight. You're going to eat dinner in your house. You're going to be able to go to a restaurant. On and on and on. I mean, you could go on for hours. I love the cross-examination of a rat. It probably is the best part of our job.
So I have to imagine, considering that the cross-examination of this former employee is going to be extensive. Does that sound correct?
Absolutely. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
I mean, I am very curious to see what is going to come out, and no doubt a lot of people are as well. As we take a look at this, and obviously we didn't really know that he was going to testify until really just 30 or 40 minutes ago. Anyone else that you would really want to hear from that you think could really shake things up one way or the other?
obviously, any of the guards, security team that worked for Diddy would be important for me to hear from them. The government just put on the escort, and that escort actually helped the defense in some ways because it corroborated their defense that Cassie Ventura was actually a willing participant in this. So when you add up her text message exchange, where she arranged, I believe, one of those freak offs, and they were deciding on whether it should be a weekday or a weekend, and she said, "I'd rather it be on a week on a Friday night as opposed to a Saturday night." Now you have this escort coming in, and on the cross examination, they brought out the fact that she was never uncomfortable. She was a very willing participant. She never saw any violence in the room. He never took any drugs. Those are very important things to the defense.
All right.
The problem is those were those who were there know that those were all lies. I don't think Cassie said herself she was not comfortable with everything that she had to do. She also testified, as well as Don Richard, as well as Kerry Morgan, and several others about the presence of pharmaceuticals. And we just saw pictures of the pharmaceuticals, pills of all different colors, okay? All stilettos, the various size bottles of baby oil and Astroglide. Like, yeah, I think it's a reach. I think that the defense is struggling at this point. I think they're struggling to defend Diddy. But you guys let me know what you think, and we're going to hear from another expert in just a moment.
The prosecution $6,000 to provide her expert testimony. Now, she says this is blind testimony, so she's never met Cassie or, any of the other witnesses right there. But the issue of bias has been raised by Sean Diddy Combs' defense team. Talk about what that bias, what the implications are, the significance of it. No doubt they want to paint her as a slanted expert, only sharing specific perspectives.
You know what's funny? Diddy's team was going to do the exact same thing. Diddy's legal team was going to call in an expert to say that Diddy had diminished mental capacity because of the pharmaceuticals and the alcohol, and probably we can include the nitrous gas, okay, and all of those things. All right, so let's see if we can move forward, because they're saying the same thing about this particular doctor, and we already know about that already. So
Good. How are you? Of course. Thanks for having me. Okay.
I was looking to see if I see Sylvia out there.
So unfortunately, I have raised the audio. It doesn't seem like there is any audio attached to this live stream right here, but you saw a number of individuals walk out of the courtroom. And if any indication, that does appear to be Dr. Don Hughes, the clinical psychologist who was testifying for hours on the domestic violence abuse cycle, in terms of how many of these victims use coping mechanisms such as drugs and alcohol, how this can impact your memory with that. So we did see, Dr. Don Hughes exiting the federal courthouse right here, as on the stand right now, George Kaplan currently testifying after a judge granted him immunity. This is one of Sean Diddy Combs' former employees. He had indicated initially when he appeared in court that he was going to invoke the Fifth Amendment right not to incriminate himself. Following that, the judge did grant him immunity right there. I did want to bring in Nima Rahmani, who is a former federal prosecutor and president of West Coast Trial Lawyers, to talk more about all of these developments with us, as we do now have a new person on the stand. And as always, Nima, we appreciate you joining us here on Live Now from Fox.
Oh, Stephanie, thanks for having me. As always, big day of testimony today.
I mean, you know what? Honestly, I feel like every single day is a big day. And it's interesting because after yesterday, I felt like, okay, this morning perhaps started it a little slowly. I think everyone was disappointed that Kid Cudi wasn't taking the stand. But my gosh, now, it's like, it's fascinating what we're hearing. Dr. Don Hughes, who we saw live exiting the courtroom, and, the discussion, the cross-examination of bias and how she's never defended a man when it comes to domestic violence. Now on the stand right now is George Kaplan, Combs' former employee. And I think a lot of people were surprised when he showed up in court. He said he only did so because he received a subpoena. He said he was going to invoke his Fifth Amendment right not to incriminate himself, and then the judge granted him immunity. How much of a surprise do you think that was to the defense, or do you think that they expected the unexpected?
I think you have to expect the unexpected in a case like this. And if you are one of Combs's employees, you should expect to get a subpoena. We saw it with James, the assistant, yesterday, and now Kaplan. Why did he invoke? Well, and this has to go with the RICO conspiracy. If you are a co-conspirator, so if you bought the condoms and the baby oil and the Astroglide for the freak-offs, even if you didn't participate in the sex acts, you could potentially be criminally liable and on the hook for sex trafficking and racketeering. So Kaplan, through his lawyers, did the safe thing. He invoked his Fifth Amendment privilege, not because he necessarily didn't want to testify, but he wanted that immunity from prosecution. And I could tell you that prosecutors love RICO for many reasons. It brings in a lot of people and a lot of evidence into these cases. It can bring in state charges. It can bring in crimes that are even barred by the statute of limitations. And by bringing all these individuals, you can lean on them, Stephanie, and force them to cooperate. And that's what you want to do. So I talked about it on Live Now yesterday. I was joking about my assistant, Julia, because the assistants know where the bodies are buried. They have information that no one else has because they're part of Combs's inner circle. They travel with him, they witness things like the freak-offs, and obviously they were privy to everything that happened with Cassie Ventura.
And that goes to my next question is, in terms of the line of questioning, what was interesting yesterday and in the previous day when Combs's former personal assistant testified, David James, the testimony that he shared, he would couch it saying, well, I had no idea that I was purchasing these items for these alleged freak-offs. I walked into the hotel room and I saw Cassie with a man and Diddy, and I had no idea what was going on. So when it comes to the line of questioning to really outline all of this, is specifically geared towards the racketeering case, what is that line of questioning that prosecutors are looking to go by?
So this is the important thing for racketeering. You need a few things. You need a criminal enterprise. So the fact that we're talking about Combs and, Bad Boy, the company, right? That is important because you need to show that criminal enterprise and Combs being head of that enterprise, right? So yesterday, David James was testifying about how he would submit things for reimbursement. But when it came to the condoms and the lube, he would pay for those cash using Combs's infamous Louis Vuitton bag that had approximately $10,000 in cash. There's nothing illegal about using cash, Christina, but when you're submitting your meals and everything else for reimbursement and you're buying other things in cash, people tend to pay or do things that are unlawful using cash. That could be prostitutes. That could be illegal drugs. So we saw that testimony. Now, you also need a pattern of racketeering activity. That's why we're talking about sex trafficking, but you don't necessarily need sex trafficking to prove the RICO charge. There can be other predicate crimes. What are some of those? Arson, blowing up Kid Cudi's car, that qualifies. Kidnapping. And kidnapping doesn't mean you got to grab someone and throw them in the back of a white van. Even if you use force to prevent someone from going somewhere or to hold them, like in that 2016 hotel video, that's kidnapping. Obviously, obstruction of justice. We heard Dawn Richard say that Combs told her that she may disappear. Bribery. We've seen an attempt to bribe Officer Flores, the security guard from the hotel. Extortion. shaking down Regina Ventura, saying, hey, if you don't pay me $20,000, I'm going to leak 2 sex tape videos. So you have all these other predicate acts that are coming in. So what the prosecution is going to do at the end of the case is say, listen, it doesn't have to be the mob, doesn't have to be the cartel. You can get to RICO through Bad Boy Entertainment, the record company with Combs at the head of it, even if you don't find sex trafficking.
That is a very, very good point. And I'm just going to share just some additional details with you on this. And so here is what was reported by the New York Times. And so we heard about it earlier. So when they raided Diddy's Florida mansion, and let me see if I can get a picture of the mansion that actually was raided. Let's do that. Let's get a picture up of his raided mansion, because I have a picture of it. Some of you had seen the Los Angeles mansion, but you may not necessarily, because I didn't recall the Miami mansion. But we heard about all the firepower, including AR-15s that were found. Hold on one second. Let's get a couple of things out of the way so I can bring this up. And I'm saying to myself, AR-15s, let me tell you something at least about Georgia when it comes to those things, because I just went to the expo in Georgia, and you could purchase an AR-15 rifle. Here's the Miami mansion. You can purchase an AR-15 rifle for about $700 and then get a 12 gauge thrown in for free. I kid you not. Okay. So what did he need an AR-15 rifle for? Like what who are you trying to shred and rip apart? All right. So here's the Miami mansion. So here's some of what was said earlier today. So in addition to the AR-15 style weapons, they found nose candy and ketamine, lingerie, 7-inch platform high heels, and bottles upon bottles of baby oil. And as we saw, the Astroglide. Now, just a reminder, federal agents raided Diddy's house in Los Angeles and then the Miami house that we're looking at here in 2024. We all saw it. Most of us saw it live. All right. And hold on one second. And so this guy, Gerard Gannon, is a special agent with Homeland Security Investigation. So he's the one that oversaw the entire Miami raid. And he testified that in order to get inside Diddy's house, which was on like a man-made island known for large celebrity estates, the government used an armored vehicle to break through the front gate. They deemed that this was the quickest and the safest option to be able to get entry onto Diddy's property. Now, at the time, his lawyers were saying that it was a gross overuse of military force. So if you heard that, you were wondering what was so gross, what was so over the top. Well, I didn't actually see them break through that gate, but I'm sure it was something out of a Hollywood movie. Now, there were between 80 and 90 agents that were involved in that Miami raid. And once they got inside, they discovered parts from 2 AR-15 style weapons with their serial numbers removed. So these were weapons that obviously whatever action these weapons were getting, they didn't want it traced back to them. They also found magazines with ammunition inside a large closet in Diddy's primary bedroom. They found Smex toys, condoms, boxes of stilettos, boxes. I don't even have boxes of stilettos up in here, Diddy. Like, come on. In one hallway closet, they found 25 bottles of baby oil and 31 bottles of lube in the hallway closet. You nasty. Prosecutors said that the prosecutors have stated, we heard this before, the agents found more than 1,000 bottles of these type of substances, meaning the baby oil and the lube, the Astroglide, across Diddy's 2 homes that were raided in Miami and Los Angeles. So Mr. Gannon, he held up some of the evidence for the jury to see, including a Gucci bag that was found inside the house that contained his nose candy, which testified testified. Yeah, the nose candy testified. The white powder was tested and it came back positive for that cocaine, okay, and ketamine, along with pink MDMA tablets and different types of benzodiazepine pills. Cassie also testified that these type of things, these pharmaceuticals, were a fixture at these FOs. So as the special agent walked the jurors through some of the pharmaceuticals that were found in the bag, Diddy, who was wearing his cream-colored sweater and gray slacks today, decides that that's a good moment to yawn. Okay, he was getting bored and sleepy, so he decided he was going to yawn at that moment. Okay. So that's what your boy did. He's yawning. Now, at other times, and I'm pretty sure when he found out that George Kaplan is going to receive immunity, which means he can speak on it, he can tell everything. Yeah, now Diddy was holding his head. He was sweating. He was cold. Well, they said it was freezing inside the courtroom, so he was holding on to himself. But, you know, hands in his head. Okay, he literally was starting to lose his cool, lose his stuff. Now, on cross-examination, Terry Garagos, who is one of the lawyers on Diddy's team, she pointed out that the AR-15 rifles were found disassembled and were thus inoperable, and asked the federal agent if he kept weapons in his home, saying, you're familiar that many people in Florida have guns in their homes, right? You know, are you familiar with that? Do you? He says, I am issued firearms for work. In other words, yes, I am familiar that many people in Florida have guns in their home. I know he was sick, okay, having to sit there and answer these dumb questions. George Kaplan, who was an executive assistant to Diddy about about 10 years ago, testified today about his typical duties, such as carrying Diddy's bags, running errands. This is the guy who is going to talk about the firebombing of Kid Cudi's car. All right, so he was the errand boy. He carried Diddy's bags. He ran errands. He purchased pharmaceuticals for him twice, and also engaged in things like cleaning up the hotel rooms that were soiled with baby oil after Diddy's stay. So he was the cleanup guy. Okay, clean all this shit up and make it like we were never here. He said that protecting him, meaning Diddy, protecting Diddy and protecting Diddy's image were really important. Again, he's been given immunity, so he's going to tell it all. The government also called, as we talked about, Dr. Dawn Hughes, who is a forensic psychologist who testified in other high-profile trials involving allegations of SA. She testified in the case between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, and she also testified in criminal cases against R. Kelly and Keith Raniere. So the prosecutors basically were using Dr. Hughes's testimony to add psychological context to why Cassie might have stayed with Diddy. We talked about this, why she was with him and kept going back on and off for 11 years, despite the fact that there was ongoing rampant physical abuse and sexual coercion. Dr. Hughes said that victims often do not leave abusive relationships when their partner maintains financial and other types of control over them. Facts. Diddy was paying for Cassie's apartment, he had bought her a car, and he was probably also giving her spending money. Not to say that she just stayed for the money, but he was controlling her whole life by controlling the things that were actually a necessity. If you don't have access to tangible resources, for example, money or an apartment, then you're left with the feeling of, where am I going to go? This is what Dr. Hughes testified today, who said she had not interviewed Diddy or Cassie or any other people involved that the government identified as victims. Now, during cross-examination, the defense pointed out repeatedly to the fact that Dr. Hughes had not reviewed any evidence in the case. Well, to be honest with you, I don't see that as necessarily a bad thing because she's speaking objectively. So the defense also highlighted the history of her testimony in dozens of court cases, noting that she had never testified in defense of a man accused of a SMEX crime. Now, just so you know, because it's been stated many times by the news outlets, this clinical psychologist was paid $6,000 for her testimony, which means that Wisdom's daughter is in the wrong business. I'm going to quit YouTube tonight and I need to find out how I can become a clinical psychologist so that I can get paid $6,000 for an hour of testimony. I'm just saying, I thought I was expensive. She's expensive. Anyway, sidebar. So she said, that's correct. I don't evaluate offenders. Now, the prosecutors are expected to call to the stand tomorrow Kid Cudi. This is the rapper who had a little romantic thing with Cassie and caused Diddy to go into such a jealous rage that he threatened Kid Cudi with blowing up his car, which did happen. So what had happened was Diddy found out about Cassie's relationship with Kid Cudi. Okay. His real name is Scott Miscudi. Okay. That's his real name, Scott Miscudi. I may be mispronouncing his last name. Don't come for me in the comments. Just tell me how to pronounce it if I said it wrong. But I'm saying Scott Miscudi. In 2011. So Diddy made a series of threats to Cassie, including that Mr. Miscudi, so just say Kid Cudi, all right, Kid Cudi's car would be blown up in his driveway. And that's what happened. His car got blown up in his driveway. Now, Tenny Garrigo said in her defense's opening statement that Diddy was simply not involved in the allegations of arson put forward by the prosecutors. This is one of the things she said in that long opening statement that she gave. Okay. So after 4 days of very disturbing testimony by Cassie about a pattern of physical abuse, pharmaceutical-fueled SMEX marathons, basically the prosecution has lined up a series of witnesses that they are hoping will help corroborate her story for the jurors. So Cassie's mom also testified. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what she testified on and what she said that sent Diddy and his defense team into shut up mode. Okay. You know how you could tell somebody to have a seat, have several seats with just a look. Okay. Nobody had nothing. You could hear a pin drop. Okay. It was crickets in the courtroom when she came off the stand. But if I was there, my ghetto behind would have been like clapping and shouting and you know, I would have broke out into a Holy Ghost praise and I would have got kicked out. Okay. Notice how I always find reasons to hypothetically get kicked out of the courtroom, which is why I ain't been there yet. All right. So several witnesses, including Cassie's mom, now have testified to directly witnessing Diddy abusing Cassie or testifying to seeing the result of the abuse, talking about bruises, swelling, busted lip, busted eye. The two men testified that they were paid to sleep with Cassie while Diddy watched. They described for the jury all of the choreography and all of the different positions and things that Diddy wanted them to do, including urinating in Cassie's mouth. All right. And then now the dispute between Diddy and Cassie over her relationship with Kid Cudi, now that is the central talk of the trial. Okay, so first it was about Cassie and Diddy's relationship. Now it's about Cassie and Kid Cudi's relationship. Cassie did testify that Diddy discovered evidence of her relationship or beginning romance. I don't even know if you can call it a relationship. I think they were just dating or talking. But anyway, but he found out about Kid Cudi while looking through her phone during one of the freak-offs. She said that he lunged at her with a wine opener between his fingers and then threatened to release explicit videos of her and to hurt both her and Kid Cudi. This is why she ran to her mama crying. Because see, Cassie didn't tell her mom what was going on up until this point. She did not want her mom to know what was going on. And I can understand that as a young woman. Okay, I remember being 25, getting myself into all types of foolery and did not want to tell my mom for two reasons. One, because I was embarrassed, I was ashamed. But two, because I knew my mama was going to come to wherever the hell I was. Okay, and she was going to stand on business. Okay, just like Cassie's mom. So Diddy mentioned that Cassie testified that Diddy had mentioned that when they were out of the country, that Kid Cudi's car would be blown up. And he wanted his friends to be there to see it. So he planned this while he was out of the country, so it could seem like he wasn't involved. All right, let's talk about real quick Cassie's mom. Okay. Still, check out, like I said, I did a 10-minute recap. So if you just want to hear about Cassie's mom, I'm going to give more details in this video, in this live, than I did on the video that I dropped, but definitely check that out. It's a really great recap on the conversation with Cassie's mom. Let me just say this. Cassie's mom ain't nothing to play with. Listen, Diddy's defense team, them 10 lawyers now that he has, I think it was 9 yesterday, but now it's 10. If they didn't know, now they know. I don't think they knew before yesterday that Cassie's mom is not to be played with. Well, guess what? They know now. They know now. Hang on a second. Let me pull up the testimony. So here's Cassie's mom. Right? There's Cassie's mama. All right, let's talk about her testimony really quick, because she had a whole lot to say. So here is what had Diddy shaking in his boots. Because she testified that Diddy took, Cassie's mom testified that she took pictures of Cassie's bruises and paid Diddy money after he became angry about Cassie and Kid Cudi, right? She wore this beautiful shawl and a turtleneck. She is sporting her salt and pepper hair. Beautiful. It's like silver. Okay. Cassie's mom, her name is Virginia. Now, she was only on the stand for 15 minutes. It only took 15 minutes to send Diddy's defense team running for the damn hills. Okay. She spoke with a steady voice, and she detailed how shortly before Christmas 2011, Cassie informed her that Diddy was threatening to release 2 explicit SMEX tapes of her. Okay. That's all she had to say. That's all Cassie's mama, or all Cassie had to say to her mama. Okay. Regina said that I was physically sick. Okay. It's Cassie's mom. I was physically sick. Now can you imagine? First, your daughter tells you, listen, my boyfriend, and not just my boyfriend, but this is a high profile celebrity. Diddy's known all around the world. Diddy is a very wealthy man. I think his net worth is something like $400 million. Okay. That's almost half. Anyway. He's going to release not 1, but 2 SMEX tapes of me if we don't, give into his demands. Right. He is asking for $20,000. And I know, well, I can't say I know for a fact, but I'm going to tell you what I think. I don't think Diddy thought that they were going to come up with the money. I think he thought that that was going to be his way to scare them into sending Cassie back. She's Latino. She's Mexican, of Mexican descent. And he probably figured, now they ain't got it. He didn't know Cassie's mom. He know now, though. I'll tell you that. He didn't know her back then. Okay. He didn't know her back then. Cassie's mom ain't nothing to play with. Anyway, so here's what happened. So, Cassie testified for 4 days, giving graphic testimony about all the violence, all the degrading situations that she had to endure during her 11-year relationship with Diddy. So the jury basically has to decide if Diddy is just violent or if his actions do amount to SMEX trafficking. Well, the jury don't have to figure out much after listening to Cassie's mama. But anyway, so the prosecution has been working to establish that Diddy did coerce and have coercive power over Cassie, in part because she loved him, but also because he held the keys to her career and because Diddy physically beat her. The jury saw 4 photographs of Cassie Ventura with bruises on her behind, her thigh, and her upper back. Her mother, Regina Ventura, says she took those photos on Christmas Eve that year when Cassie told her that Diddy had beaten her up. Now, around the same time, Cassie's mom testifies that she learned that Diddy wanted her to send him $20,000 via wire transfer because he was mad because he had spent all this money on Cassie. I'm going to get back to that in a second. And, you know, I didn't spend all this money on your daughter and she over here messing around with another man because Cassie was involved with Kid Cudi at the time. Now, this money that Diddy is saying that he spent on her, how about Diddy was spending Cassie's record deal money? Because, you know, when you get a record deal, there's certain things that the label will pay for, right? They're going to pay for your studio time. There's a cost and a dollar amount associated with that. They're going to pay for your marketing. There's a dollar amount and a cost associated with that. There are certain things that they expect to pay for as a part of your contract. You know, you got to spend money to make money. And of course, helping with your album, and then they take a cut of that, which they use to recoup their investment, and then to also profit. So who was spending whose money? Okay, Diddy over here spending Cassie's record deal money on freak offs and stilettos, because who you think paid for all that baby oil? If you ask me, and this is just my opinion, it was paid for with Cassie's record deal money. Anyway, so Cassie's mom, Regina Ventura, she said that she was scared for Cassie's safety. So she and her husband used a home equity loan to wire money to an account associated with Bad Boy Records. That is Diddy's company. Okay. The account was not in Diddy's name. It was to Bad Boy Records. Mistake number one. Well, mistake number one was putting hands on Cassie. Mistake number two was threatening to release one of her Smex videos. And mistake number three was sending a threatening letter to Cassie's mama asking for $20,000 to be sent to Bad Boy. Anyway, the money was returned to them 4 or 5 days later. And Cassie's mom said that she never had any contact with Diddy about it. So did you hear what I said? After all of that, Diddy sends the money back about 4 or 5 days later. He sends the money back. So they went through all of this trouble, took out a home equity loan because he's threatening Cassie's life just for him to turn around and send the money back. Like, what's wrong with you? I don't know if he had a change of heart, if he realized, man, that was stupid. So Diddy's lawyers said they had no questions for Regina Ventura. Okay, no questions for Cassie's mom. And when she left the stand, baby, she stared straight into Diddy's face. Like, what you want? I dare you to say something. Go ahead and raise up on me. Okay. He looked directly ahead, never making any contact with Cassie's mom. Okay. So, yeah, Cassie's mom did a great job. She did a really great job. Let's talk a little bit real quick about David James. That was another assistant. So he explained some of the routine work that he did for Diddy, such as keeping schedules, catering to Diddy's preferences for ketchup and applesauce. Ugh. He also described how security personnel for Diddy carried a Louis Vuitton bag at all times that was filled with pills and cash. One type of pill was ecstasy, he said, that was shaped like President Obama's face. Are y'all hearing me? He has ecstasy pills shaped like President Obama's face. Now you tell me that he is all mentally there. So on Tuesday, Diddy wore like a blue-gray type of sweater. His mother and his 6 adult children were all present in the courtroom at various times. Okay, and his sister Keisha Combs was also in court this past week. So this guy, David James, kind of corroborated what George, what's George's last name? I don't forgot it that quick. The guy that's going to testify that got immunity, Kaplan. Okay, he kind of corroborated some of what Kaplan said because George Kaplan talked about carrying Diddy's bags. Okay. hold on a second. He also said he had a few things to say yesterday. So besides the fact that the Louis Vuitton bag was filled with cash and pills, including an ecstasy pill shaped like President Obama's face, David James also described the workplace that was closely scrutinized, sometimes to the point of feeling intimidated. So he basically is describing walking on eggshells. It was a hostile environment. Twice he said he was asked to take a lie detector test to prove that he was not responsible for missing cash or a missing watch. He testified about an incident that happened one night in January 2009 at Diddy's home in Los Angeles, where he says he was researching possible tattoos for him on a computer. Diddy, who was visibly upset, burst into the room complaining about a blog post that reported that he had beaten Cassie, and Diddy demanded to see his browsing history on the computer that David James was using. Because apparently David James telling him that, no, I'm over here looking up tattoos for you. What are you talking about? That wasn't enough. Later, Mr. James also said that he was instructed to deliver fried chicken to Cassie at a London hotel in Los Angeles. And that's the same hotel where Cassie testified last week that she had been taken to heal after Diddy beat her, and she wanted to leave that hotel, and he told her no. David James also talked about a time in Miami in 2008 when Diddy ordered him to deliver an iPad to a hotel room. And that's where he saw Cassie motionless on the bed, as well as an unknown man naked and wearing a condom, who scurried off as if he didn't want to be seen. Wow. David James said he did not see Diddy, but could hear a shower running. He also spoke about going with a member of Diddy's security team to a Los Angeles diner in 2008. And that's where he said he saw Suge Knight from Death Row Records, who is a longtime rival of Diddy. Now, back at Diddy's house, Diddy ordered this guy, David James, his assistant, and the security officer to return with him. So Diddy's in the back seat with 3 guns in his lap. This is all according to David James's testimony. He said this was the first time, being Diddy's assistant, that he realized that his life was in danger. So then he gets cross-examined by Mark Agnifilo. And he basically, Agnifilo asked Mr. James, asked him why he did not raise any objection to traveling to a possible gunfight. I cannot. You need to go have a seat somewhere with your ignorant self. Apparently, you don't know how this goes. You don't question Diddy, okay? You don't ask Diddy why. You don't refuse Diddy's demands, because what Diddy wants, Diddy gets. You gonna ask him, whoa, I might get hurt. I might lose my life. Why I gotta go? No. So he says, and rightfully so, I was doing what I was told. This is what David James testified to. He said, I was doing what I was told. He said he then gave 6 months notice to Bad Boy. Wow, 6 months notice? Oh, you good. He wouldn't have got 6 hours notice. After that, I would have been done. Mr. Agnifilo asked Mr. James whether he had received any legal protections from the government as a witness in the case, which he replied he received a proffer agreement which allows a witness to provide information with some protections from prosecution, but he could not speak on the details. Now, after he stepped down, I guess it was reported that he and Diddy kind of like nodded at each other. So Diddy acknowledged him. Diddy didn't acknowledge Cassie's mama, but he nodded his head at this one. All right, then Sheree Hayes testifies in the afternoon that from 2012 to 2015, working under the name Punisher, okay, he was an escort. He was hired for 8 to 12 freak-offs, and paid around anywhere up to $2,000 at a time. So Punisher said that when Cassie first hired him, she initially told him that he was to dance for her birthday, and later Diddy entered the room in like a veil-like mask that obscured his face. A veil-like mask. Diddy, something is wrong with you, okay? Your wires got crossed. Somebody clipped one, okay? They tripped a wire. You need help. But they eventually engaged in activity, with Diddy frequently directing them on what to do. So it was supposed to be just come and dance for my birthday, but then it turned into, okay, now we're doing this. Okay. We already had heard from Daniel Phillip that he became concerned for Cassie's safety after seeing Diddy throw a liquor bottle in her direction and overhearing a slap until she cried in another room. So that was his testimony. Now, Punisher said he did not perceive any discomfort on Cassie's part. It seemed like she was that she had consented as far as he was concerned. So he's like, listen, I didn't force myself on her. She was with it. Okay. Now, it could have been because Diddy had already pushed how many pills of ecstasy down her throat, prior to. That's possible. He said at times Cassie seemed to express some exacerbation at Diddy's instructions. I did observe sometimes a sigh, a wince that appeared to be frustration with the frequency of the directions. So that is what you have missed for the last couple of days. Okay, I wasn't planning to do that, but I figured while I'm here, might as well. So that's what has been going on so far this week. I don't believe that there are too many more updates in terms of this case. I think we've kind of heard all that we're going to hear, and that was enough. That was quite a lot for one day. So that's where you have it. Yes, Kia. Okay, ecstasy pill shaped like President Obama's face. What President Obama got to do with it? Like, what? Why are we bringing the former President Obama into this? He has enough issues on his own. He is worried about his good friend Joe Biden, who is fighting prostate cancer right now. Okay, I'm just saying. And yes, Kia said it. Diddy is done. Okay, I'll say it properly. Diddy's done. Okay, yeah, he's definitely done. Definitely done. Queen Cassie's mama dropped the mic. That was a fact. She sure did. Okay, sure did. Diddy would not even look her in her face. He wouldn't even look in her direction. So yeah, so far there's a lot of movement in this case. They're going through the witnesses pretty quickly. There is a possibility that there are 6 more weeks, but the prosecution stated last week that they thought they could wrap this up in 6 weeks, which means for them, after this week, they'll be ready to wrap up in another 4 weeks, sometime the middle toward the end of June. So listen, guys, thank you so much for being on the live. All right. Those of you who called in, those of you who shared your thoughts in the live chat, thank you so much. Thank you again for those of you who contributed toward our super chat goal. If you're on the replay and you did not get a chance to participate, it's not too late. Just hit that $sign and you can contribute whatever amount you would like to. And I thank you in advance for your support. If you didn't like on the way in, make sure you hit the like button on the way out, guys. And listen, be safe, be at peace, keep your eyes and your ears to these YouTube streets, baby. And I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye, y'all.